Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to the final day of pre-season testing in 2025. Yes, this test has absolutely flown by. Of course, only 3 days that we have in Bahrain, and we have got only 4 hours to go until the very end of pre-season testing. And so far, we have some decent ideas as to where certain teams are, but still, with some other teams, we don't quite know where they're at, and that's what we hope to find out a bit more of in this final afternoon session that we're going to be watching along. And obviously, the afternoon session getting underway, as you can see, in just under 15 minutes from now. So, yeah, that's what we're going to be looking out for. And fingers crossed, we get some very quick times and we can find out a lot more about our grid for 2025. In a few moments, I will get into what the times so far are. Obviously, we've had a morning session that finished about 45 minutes ago. We'll get into the results of that session in a moment. But yeah, looking forward to this afternoon session. Hopefully, it's more exciting than last year's afternoon session on the final day, because last year, in that final few hours, we were expecting what do you call it? We were expecting something, I wouldn't say big, but we were expecting the teams to really, push and show what they had pace wise, but we didn't end up really getting that. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, but if that does happen again and it becomes clear in the final couple hours that teams are just, doing long runs and not going to go for those faster runs, then even though I originally have said I'm planning to stream till 4 p.m. when the session should finish, maybe I'll finish the stream earlier if it becomes clear, like I said, that teams are not going to go for those quicker runs. Because I remember last year, I brought the stream to an earlier close because of that, because the teams just, didn't bother going for the aggressive runs that we've seen in the final hours of testing before. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But I hope you guys are well. If this is the first stream back for you here on the channel, then great to have you back. If this is the first stream in general for you watching on this channel, then hello to you. Welcome along. But yeah, hope no matter what time zone you guys are in, what part of the world you're from, hope everything is going well in your part of the world, and hope you can join me today in watching along, keeping up to date with the goings on of the final day of preseason testing. And of course, it is a work day for a lot of people, obviously in North America, Europe, and all of that. If of course you can't watch along the session with me, don't worry. If you listen along, I will keep you absolutely bang up to date with everything going on in these final few hours of testing. Also, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat. That will keep running until the end of the stream. And if we do stream until 4 p.m. My time, which is, just over 4 hours from now, be interesting to see how many votes we can get on that poll, because it is quite an interesting poll where I've asked you guys who will win the 2025 Drivers' Championship. And your options are, of course, the world champion himself, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris. Those are your 4 options in that poll. Out of those 4, who do you think wins the championship? Most likely, I think those are the most, likely 4 to win the championship. Obviously, if Mercedes have got a very strong car this year, Russell and Antonelli, you'd have to throw in there, but we don't have evidence that they've got a championship-winning car. And then obviously Oscar Piastri, will he be able to step up consistently to the level of Lando Norris this year? We'll have to find out. So yeah, I think those 4 drivers are the 4 most likely. So out of those 4, again, who do you think wins the championship? Let me know in that poll. And then when we come to the end of the stream, whether it's in 4 hours from now, 3 hours, or whenever, we will go through the results to see what you guys believe will happen on the Drivers' Championship side in 2025. But yeah, just under 10 minutes until we get into the afternoon session. So, what we're going to do quickly is look at the results, or not results, but the times so far from day 3. And in terms of who was on what tyre when they did their lap time, I believe one of these might be incorrect in terms of not being on the C3 and being on a different compound. I do think maybe Hadjar or maybe Bortoletto might have actually done their time on the C2 compound, but I didn't have enough time to check whether they did absolutely do it on the C2 or C3. Almost everyone, though, definitely did their best time so far on the C3 compound, and currently Charles Leclerc quickest on a 1:30.8, which is quite slow. It's a second and a half slower than the best time of testing so far, which was set by Carlos Sainz yesterday, which was a 1:29.3, I think it was. So yeah, quite slow. Obviously, the morning session, the grip on the track is not as good as it is in the afternoon session. Obviously, with the sun out today as well in Bahrain, it is a lot hotter, so making it a bit tougher to set a really good time. But also, I think teams in general this morning just not really pushing that hard. Kimi Antonelli second for Mercedes, third Lando Norris, fourth Max Verstappen. Obviously very close. You can see was in the top 4. Jack Doohan fifth for Alpine, sixth Alexander Albon, seventh Isaac Hadjar, eighth Fernando Alonso, ninth is Gabriel Bortoletto, and then 10th Oliver Behrman. One thing as well, I think I might have actually, looking back, I might have got incorrect, is the gaps through that top 10. I think the gaps might actually be quite a bit bigger than what I've put there, so I might have actually got that incorrect. Once we get to the watch-along screen for that part of the stream, it should be correct. If it's not, then I'll make sure to update it. But yeah, it should be correct on the watch-along screen when we get to those graphics once the session gets underway. But in terms of the order, that is the order so far. And yeah, nothing you can really tell from this. I mean, Haas pushing a lot harder than they have so far, which is good to see. But yeah, we haven't found out anything extra from this morning session on the final day so far to tell us anything extra about the teams for 2025. So in a second, we'll go back to the main screen. But yeah, this afternoon session, we should see lap times in the 1:29s. And there you go, about 6 minutes to go until the session begins. Yeah, the times we should see is definitely in the 1:29s. At best, I think you're looking at probably a 1:28.7. Probably is going to be the absolute best lap time we see in testing today. The pole position at this track, by the way, was a 1:29.1 from last year, which Carlos Sainz yesterday was only 0.2 of a second away from, I believe, on a slower compound. So what that shows is Williams have improved quite a lot, but also these cars are quite a bit quicker than they were a year ago at the start of March and end of February. So, yeah. But in terms of what we know so far, like I said, Williams have got a much faster car. That is clear to see. The lap time comparison of what they're doing so far in testing compared to their best time in Bahrain from last year is gigantic. So Williams have clearly improved. I would say they're probably looking to be at the front of the midfield pack, say around 5th best team. McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes all look to be in the same ballpark, at least on race pace. In terms of quali pace, I can't tell. So we'll have to find out hopefully more in this session. With Red Bull, we don't know anything. They haven't pushed at all so far. Racing Bulls and Sauber, I'm pretty confident are the two slowest teams. Sauber being the slowest and Racing Bulls being second slowest. But, let's say Williams are the quickest midfield team, and then you've got Racing Bulls 9th and Sauber 10th. In regards to Aston Martin, Alpine, and Haas, I don't know where those teams are exactly. Haas have not shown us anything. Alpine look a lot better than they did last year in testing. Obviously, last year in testing, they were horrific. But I don't think we have enough evidence to know exactly where they are. If I was to guess what the midfield pecking order is right now, I would say Williams 5th, Aston Martin 6th, Alpine 7th, Haas 8th, and then Racing Bulls 9th, Sauber 10th. The only thing that I think could easily be different is I think Haas maybe are ahead of Alpine in 7th. But yeah, I think that's probably what the midfield pecking order is. In terms of the front four teams, though, we still don't have a clue. I went through the long run data from yesterday, comparing, Norris, Leclerc, and Antonelli for their respective teams, and Mercedes looked pretty good on the long runs. McLaren did as well. Ferrari not so much, but were doing better on the harder compounds compared to what they were doing on the softer compounds. So yeah. So we found out a bit, but still not enough, really. So yeah, we're just a couple minutes away. Obviously, I'll get to the watch along screen in a moment when we're about to get underway. Let me just read out a couple comments quickly. Brother Moz, good to see you, mate. Obviously, long-time regular of the channel, says, you don't have Oscar as an option, unfortunately. Most drivers are a bit up and down the first 2 years. The third, they usually make a leap. Yeah, if I could, I would have put Oscar as an option, especially being in that car, which should be very fast this year. But we don't know whether Oscar is going to make that leap. I hope he does. If you were to compare it to, Lando Norris, of course, in Lando's third year, he did make that big leap forward from being a good driver, more of like a midfield level driver, and then in that third year became, I would say, an elite level Formula One driver, and pretty much has been elite level since then. And Bravo also saying, and Lewis has no chance in his opinion. Yeah. With Hamilton, again, as I said in my Ferrari video, which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure to go and check out. Link in the description to my video about why Ferrari can win the championship in 2025. Yeah, with Hamilton, it's a matter of seeing whether he will be back to his best level or close to his best level. If he is close to his best level this year, then absolutely he can win the championship. But if he's performing this year like he did last year, then I think he'll finish where I had him in my early 2025 predictions video, which was, 5th place. Which would be better than last year, but obviously still not good enough for him. But we've got 30 seconds, around 30 seconds to go. And I think I'll just switch over now to the watch along part of the screen. And yeah, these gaps you see are accurate. The ones I had earlier on screen, for some reason, were not. I don't quite understand why they weren't. Why they were not the right gaps. But the order was correct. The other session has now started. I'll sync up the timer at the 3 hour and 59 minute mark. As the first car on track is Esteban Ocon. Of course, first year at Haas F1, and funnily enough, man on the my screen as well. Yeah, Ocon had a troubled year at Alpine. Obviously, a big falling out and split from the team. Still was able to get a fantastic podium in Brazil, where he finished second in what was one of the best drives Ocon's had in his career. So he's not, maybe last year wasn't one of his best years, but he's not, finished or anything like that. He's still at, you look at the midfield level, he's still at a pretty good level, is Ocon. But yeah, once they show the timer on the broadcast, I will sync it up as soon as I can, but they're not showing the timer at the moment, as it looks like Williams are preparing to get Carlos Sainz in their car. Also, Ferrari changing their car around because Lewis Hamilton will be in the car for the afternoon session. Hamilton has only done the morning session so far this week, as Pierre Gasly is now on track. I believe it's Pierre Gasly. Jack Doohan, his teammate, had a decent run earlier, ending up in 5th place. And right, there you go. They're finally showing the timer. So I'll sync it up in about, just over 45 seconds from now. But, yeah, it is the Gas Man, who I thought had a pretty good season in general last year, considering the car he had to drive and the issues he had to deal with the team, and was, in the second half of the season, I think definitely one of the top few drivers on the grid. He was consistently banging in some good qualifying performances and getting a lot of good results as well. As Aston Martin have got boards up outside of their garage. Now, I will just go on to Aston Martin in a moment. I just want to get the timer on screen, though. There you go. 3 hours and 57 minutes to go as well. The normally I'd call it the lap counter, obviously where you can see the timer. I have just slightly redesigned it and put it into a better spot so you guys can, from now on, more clearly see the pictures of the cars on screen. So yeah, hopefully that is better moving forward. As Pierre Gasly starts a run on the C1 compound tyre. And that's another thing, is obviously as lap times get set, I will update the order and also manually type in what the gap is. So Ocon has just gone up to 11th place. I don't know what lap time he did, though, but as soon as I know, I'll update it. But Aston Martin was supposed to have Lance Stroll in the car for, I think, the entire day. And what do you call it? Lance not feeling well today. He is, I believe, going to be in the car this afternoon, but he was, like I said, supposed to be in the car all day today, I think. But because he wasn't feeling well this morning, Fernando did the morning session. So Aston Martin, probably, if Stroll is still not feeling great, I wouldn't expect a ton of running on track from Stroll. As Pierre Gasly comes up to the final corner. The exit of that final corner, always wanting to drag you off the track. As Gasly goes up to 11th place ahead of Esteban Ocon, his ex-teammate. But yeah, as long as the Alpine car is as good as it was at the end of last season, I don't see why Gasly can't consistently finish in the points. That's what he was doing after the summer break last year, pretty much. So, yeah, I don't see why he can't continue that. He's a pretty good driver. And, just needs really the car to be on his side. And right, oh yeah, just wanted to announce as well that as I said yesterday, my normal, co-commentator and of course long-time channel contributor Niblo, I did say might be joining us today, and yeah, that is still possible. If he does join us, it's probably going to be in the second half of this session, so say maybe in 2 to 3 hours from now, he'll hop on if he does. So yeah, but yeah, if he is able to hop on, obviously I'll let you guys know as Ocon comes back into the pits. Brevin Moss says I'm in bed as it's 11 p.m, so I have Chad's chatting in my ear asleep tonight. Vincent says, hey everyone, checking in before heading into work. Have a great time. I'm hoping for Max to take another title. Alonso and Sainz make newsworthy moments throughout, and I expect Lewis will struggle. Good to see, by the way. Right, so yeah, Gasly, his lap time, 1.7 seconds off the pace. And obviously, they're not going to just come straight out and set a, very quick time immediately. And yeah, Alex Albon is the only driver in the top, in the top 10 that set their time on a different compound than the C3 compound. He did his on the C2, which Tyre corrected. If he did it on the C3, he probably would have gone at least up to 4th, maybe even 3rd. So, yeah, Williams have got a very good car. There is no doubt about that. Whether it is, red flag. Obviously, the timer will keep running during the red flag. Don't know what the red flag would be for. Earlier, it was for, I think, a small amount of debris on the pit straight. Probably what it is for. Again, some debris somewhere else. Yeah, when I say it's a very good car, in terms of the midfield, it is. I'm not saying it's a front-running car, but yeah, I think if I was to judge right now where Williams are, then like I said, best of the rest behind the top 4 teams is where I would put them. But we did just get Yuki Tsunoda come out on track right before that red flag, but he's obviously going to have to come back in. And Ocon, with his lap time, was 2 seconds off the pace. As that's why we have a red flag for an incredibly stupid reason. A minibus momentarily didn't drive literally onto the track, but was a bit too close to the track. And yeah, so whoever is driving that is going to get a gigantic telling off. It looks like one of those minibuses where they maybe transport the marshals around or help, transport the drivers back when they break down. And yeah, normally or nearly went on the track. So yeah, we've had some pretty stupid red flags so far in testing. Like I said earlier, it was for like small debris on the pit straight. Obviously, on day 1 in the afternoon session, there was a massive power failure. And obviously, that meant that there was no power at the track as it was getting darker. And then eventually they found the lights and then extended the session by an hour and they still got in a good amount of running. But yeah, it was still a bit embarrassing for the track. But KH saying hopefully there will be a battle between Gasly and Sainz for the top midfielder. Well, hopefully, yeah, it will be Gasly, Sainz, Albon, Alonso. Obviously, we have to remember Ocon. You probably throw in there as well, considering Haas, really should carry over the speed they had last year. So we could get some really good battles at the top of that midfield pack between some pretty good drivers. And I think in general, 2025 is just going to be super competitive throughout the field. There's not going to be like gigantic gaps from team to team where there's no real fighting going on. The biggest gap, of course, will be from the top teams to the midfield teams, but even the gap between them, I don't think is going to be that big. It'll be, a few tenths of a second, but, I remember a few years ago in like 2018 where it was like a second plus between the front-running teams and the midfield teams, which was a joke, really. I remember, what was it? As the red flag has gone in, by the way, we're back underway as Gasly has come back out. But I remember, what was it, Mexico 2018, all of the midfield runners ended up, I think, 2 laps down on the race winner, who was Max Verstappen, I think. And I thought at the time, just like how much of a joke it is, just how far off the midfielders and how bad they were. Thankfully, since then, it's improved a lot, the quality of the midfield in terms of the pace of the cars relative to the front runners. But yeah, that was probably when it was at its worst in terms of, the midfield was so far off the front runners. It was a joke. And you still have some decent teams in the midfield. Renault, obviously the Renault works team, McLaren, Williams had fallen off a cliff. Force India were going through a lot of financial trouble as well. So it was a bad time, really, for the midfield. As Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari is on the track. A Ferrari car, which I have to say, the livery, I'm not a fan of. I didn't mind the HP logo on the Ferrari last year because it was only just the logo. And then, surrounding it, it was still red. But now they've got that white cover around it, and it just looks horrible. It really, really does. So yeah, not a fan of the livery, but maybe, an uglier Ferrari car is a sign that this is really their year, because we've had some really good-looking Ferrari cars in the last few years that haven't won the championship or even come close. I remember the 2022 Ferrari was one of the best-looking Ferraris we've had, I'd say, this century. But in the end, didn't come close to winning the championship, as Lewis Hamilton is on a run on the C3 compound. Not a very quick run, obviously. But yeah, how exciting is it to have Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari? And if he does, like I said, he doesn't have to get back necessarily to the level he was at in 2017, 2018. Even if he gets back to the level he was at in, say, 2022 or 2023, that would be, if the car's good enough, that would be good enough for him to contend for the championship and give us one hell of a Formula One season. As Hamilton understeering here and there, as Pierre Gasly has just gone up to 6th place, and Ocon has gone up to 10th. Let's see where Lewis Hamilton goes. 13th, 1.6 seconds off the pace. Yeah, Gasly up to 6th, Ocon 10th, Hamilton in 13th place. So let me just update the order. As KH saying, Williams looking very good, especially with Sainz. Yeah, they with Sainz at the wheel, they've looked very good so far. But right, so Gasly just under 0.6 of a second off the pace. And let me just do these other gaps quickly. As Tsunoda, it looks like he's on a... Well, he's done a lap time, but it's quite slow. He looks like he's on a bit more of a proper lap now. As Ocon, he improved to being 1.3 seconds off the pace. Like I said earlier, Haas pushing harder, but still nowhere near, I think, what they probably can do. So, right, let me just do these last couple. As Hamilton, yeah, 1.6 seconds off the pace. As Tsunoda clearly is actually doing a long run. And hopefully that all goes well for Tsunoda in a Racing Bulls car that does not look like it's going to be threatening the top 10 that many times in 2025. At least not for now. Obviously, we'll see how they develop over the season. We have to remember Racing Bulls finished... Where did they finish? 8th, I think it was, in the championship they finished. They will have, in the first half of the season until June the 30th, they will have the third most time in the wind tunnel of any team. So they've got quite a bit of time to improve this car compared to other teams. So second half of the season, maybe we'll see a big improvement and a real big push from them. But their worsening of the driver lineup, no disrespect to Hadjar, but I don't think he's on the same level as Liam Lawson, is not going to help them this season. As George Russell, who had a brilliant 2024, easily his best Formula One season to date, is out on track and is doing a decently quick run so far, only slightly slower than Leclerc after the first sector. Mercedes have been decent in this test. They've quietly gone about their business. And yeah, they look decent, especially on the long runs. They look pretty good. But last year, Mercedes were also pretty good on longer runs. It was the qualifying pace that was lacking a lot of the time, which really cost them being able maybe to go and get an extra race win or two. As Russell losing a lot of time in the middle sector. Of course, it's only his first run. As Hamilton now goes up to 12th place. I'll update that in a moment. Let's just see where his ex-teammate George Russell is going to end up. And Russell goes up to 8th place. Decent start for Russell. And I'll just update that lap time as he's 3/4 of a second off the pace. And they're just showing now a replay of Russell at turn 1. And absolutely smashing the apex of turn 1. On the exit of turn 1, though, did get a bit crossed up. But still all good. And then here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton on the exit of turn 4, just kicking up some gravel. I've noticed with Hamilton at that corner, turn 4, he does like to go quite a bit wider than other drivers and use up as much road as he can get away with. Obviously, if you remember that Bahrain Grand Prix of 2021, it was quite controversial that Grand Prix, because it was, I think, Lewis Hamilton who repeatedly went over the white line. But in the race director's notes, of course, it was stated that was absolutely fine, which is why he did not get any punishment for it. But yeah, I just, like I said, just noticed that he really likes using up as much road as he can on that part of the track. But yeah, Russell up to 8th. Lewis Hamilton is now 13th. Stephen M saying, I think Albon has said they've been focusing more on the rule change, so if they are top of the mid-pack, that is impressive. Yeah, that would be if that is true. If the Mercedes engine next season, though, is as good as some people are reporting it might be, Williams are in a pretty good spot, because obviously they will have Mercedes power units, along with obviously the works team, McLaren also, and Alpine. As long as Williams ahead of Alpine, if the Mercedes power unit is really strong, then Williams could be next year maybe third, fourth quickest team, more so back to where they were, 2014 with those regulations. But we have no idea yet, truly, who will get the engine regulations right. And obviously, next season is going to be very interesting. Especially with Honda returning, Audi finally coming to Formula One. Also, an 11th team next year, remember? Cadillac Racing, I think, is that what their official name is going to be? Who will be powered, I think, by Ferrari for a couple years, and then General Motors will come in 2028. And yeah, really looking forward to having an extra team on the grid, which we've been crying out for a few years. Yeah, next year is going to be very interesting. Obviously, this time next year, very, very interesting. To see, just who's getting it right and all of that. So Lewis Hamilton now goes up to 10th. But I think this year, if this year turns out to be as good as we are hoping it will be, I think what we need to do really is just enjoy this season, because next year might be the beginning of a really exciting era, or it might be the beginning of years of domination by one team, like we had with Mercedes at the start of the V6 era. So savor this year if it is as good as we hope, because it might be the last year in not a while, but the last year in a few years where we get, multiple drivers winning races and fighting for the championship. I hope that's not the case. But when you look at, when we have new regulations, what tends to happen is one team gets it a lot more right than the others and ends up being miles ahead. Again, Mercedes, in 2014. If you look at this, what do you call it? If you look at this ground effect era, obviously Ferrari and Red Bull were the two that really got things right initially. But then once Ferrari dropped off, Red Bull maintained their very strong car and ended up absolutely dominating. So, new regulations, whilst they're exciting, doesn't necessarily mean things are going to close up or we're going to get, multiple drivers fighting for the championship. Normally, when you get to the end of, a type of era, or when you get to, when the regulations, as Pierre Gasly goes quickest, 130.6, Let me just update that. Yeah, when you get to the end of regulations that have been in force for a few years, and the regulations, let's say, have not changed really at all, and if you look at these ground effect regulations we've had in place since the start of 2022, we've had a couple technical directives, but other than that, the regulations pretty much have been the same. And yeah, in 2022, we had 3 front-running teams, and then a big, big gap to the midfield. Then, obviously, in 2023, Red Bull were miles ahead of everyone. We got some, Aston Martin and Alpine getting in there with Ferrari and Mercedes, and then obviously McLaren got in there as well, which was, a good to see it closing up. But obviously now the field is, even closer because, again, the regulations have stayed the same for long enough that the pack just gets even closer. So, yeah, this could be a really great Formula One season, but again, it could also be the last great Formula One season we have for a few years if one team does have a ridiculous advantage next year by getting the engine regulations absolutely bang on. So yeah, but one thing I do hope with these new engine regulations is that they remain in place for the rest of the decade. So to give the other engine manufacturers and teams, time to catch up and hopefully then by say 2028, 2029, we'll get to a position where you've got a few teams, in close proximity to each other fighting for the top few positions. Because, if you change the regulations too much, it messes things up, which is something that I wish Bernie Ecclestone had learned when he was running Formula One, because he changed the regulations, or the FIA did, way too many times. Anyway, let me just get these gaps correct now that we have a new man at the top. As we've got Sauber of Nico Hulkenberg now on a lap in the green mean machine, which will be hugging the back of the field. And let me just do these last few drivers. As Hulkenberg has done a decent first sector for his first run. And let me just do these last couple. There you go. And obviously with Hulkenberg, I'll update what his lap time is when he gets to the line in 30 seconds or so. As he's now 2.5 seconds off the pace of Gasly. So Hulkenberg clearly is not in a car that's, light or aggressive. As he understeers massively at the final corner and goes 15th, 3.5 seconds off the pace. Car did look a bit heavy compared to the Alpine, so Hulkenberg clearly a lot more fuel on board, but the handling of that Sauber does not look good. But that's not a surprise because it was the worst car last year, so there's no reason for it to be massively better this year when that team is just preparing for next year when they become the Audi Formula One team. As Oscar Piastri is not very far away from getting out there on the track. He's ready, just waiting for the car to be fully ready. KH saying hopefully Albon will also have a great season. As I am going to do a season preview video, obviously, before we get to the Formula One season. And I am going to make this point in that video, but I, may as well talk about it now as well. This season is by far the most important season of Alex Albon's career, because he's been the man for Williams the last 2 or 3 years, and got a lot of credit for some great results and brilliant qualifyings and all of that, but he has had not very good teammates. So it's always been hard to know whether Albon, is he truly getting the best out of the car? As Gasly goes another couple tenths of a second quicker onto a 1:30.459, which is still pretty slow. Again, the best time of testing so far, about a second quicker than that from yesterday. So that's not a lap time to really be impressed with. Albon has not had really good teammates. I mean, Colapinto for the second half of last season, who in a couple races did show up Albon, but this is, like I said, this is his not his year, but this is the year where he needs to prove most just how good he is, because Carlos Sainz, whilst I don't think Carlos is an elite level driver, and when I say elite level, I'm talking the level of Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, that level. He is a very good driver. He is a very, very good driver. I mean, I had him ranked, I think, 5th, was it? Or 5th or 6th best driver of 2024. Obviously won a couple races last year, had a lot of podiums. He's a very, very good driver, and he has been for years. He's got, 4 race wins to his name. I think at Ferrari, I think he did really the best he could at Ferrari. I don't think you could really look at his career and say he could have done a lot more. So, maximised himself there. Obviously got dropped for Lewis Hamilton, which, from Ferrari's perspective, is the right decision. But Sainz, coming into Williams, he's just come off of arguably his strongest season of his career. He's going to be performing at a pretty high level for, the midfield. If Albon can beat Carlos Sainz this year, then I'm pretty sure Albon will find himself back at a front-running team in the future, whether that's Red Bull or maybe Mercedes or even Ferrari, if Hamilton is only there a couple years and they're looking for a quick replacement for 2 or 3 years. Albon maybe could go there if he does beat Carlos Sainz and prove to be at least on that level, if not better than Sainz. But if Sainz comfortably is the number 1 driver at that team and is beating Albon regularly, then Albon is not finished in terms of, his Formula 1 career. He'll still be on the grid and all of that. But he will never find his way back to a front-running team ever again if Carlos, comfortably beats him this year. And he will always be a midfield driver for life if that does happen. So this is a crucial year. If Alex Albon wants to win races and be at a front-running team in the future, then he has to at least match Carlos Sainz this year. But if he beats him, great. That's, even better. But if he, like I said, if he gets comfortably beaten by Carlos, then his chances are gone. He'll never go back to Red Bull or go to Mercedes or Ferrari. That will just never happen. Anyway, let me just update these gaps. Esteban Ocon is now up to ninth. As Lance Stroll has joined the action. Didn't feel well enough to compete in the morning session, which is why Fernando took over. But he's now in the car for these final 3.5 hours. But let me just update the last few lap times. And there you go. As Lance Stroll has done a lap time, but it's 20 seconds off the pace. I won't update him quite yet. As the final driver we're waiting for to come out on the track is Piastri, who I'd imagine in the next 45 minutes maximum he'll be out there. Turbo Power saying, hello, how come Lando's so low on the pole? To be fair, I'm not actually sure why. I'm not going to read out what the current poll, not results, but what the current order is. But I'm not sure why he's polling so low. But that's the view of the people that voted. I think we have to remember with last year, Lando obviously competed for the championship, but did not really show himself well last season. And it was not a good season for his reputation in terms of, how good of a driver he is. So that's, probably why people are coming away with that impression of, he's not going to win the championship, even though McLaren might have the best car this season. As Ocon coming back into his pit box. As Yuki Tsunoda now on an outlap. KH saying Lawson has a lot of expectations this year. Can he handle the pressure? I don't think he has as many expectations as maybe you say he does. I mean, does he have to perform better than Perez did? Yes, obviously. But he's under no pressure in regards to, competing with Max Verstappen, because obviously that's not possible. Max is on his own, in that team. He's miles ahead of Lawson. I think with Lawson, what he needs to be is performing at a respectable level on a consistent basis. I think that's all we could really ask. If Lawson is about half a second off the pace of Max consistently, and is consistently, doing the best he can in qualifying on the race, even if it's not great results, as long as he's with, around half a second at worst off, then I don't think you can really ask much more of Lawson. The problem is, though, is because Red Bull don't have, most likely, a car that is, as quick as it was a year ago, where it was miles ahead of everyone else, Lawson's results are going to look worse than they actually are. Because let's say Max is fighting for the win in a car that is not necessarily the quickest, but is, right there, say, level pace with, say, McLaren. If Lawson, let's say it was the Bahrain Grand Prix, for example. Max is fighting for the win. Let's say Max wins the race in a really close fight with Norris. And again, the two cars, the Red Bull and the McLaren, are very similar pace. You'd probably expect Lawson to then finish about half a minute at best behind Max, which would put Lawson probably at best in fifth place if it's close between the top teams. Now, again, we would not think that was that great, but considering how quick Max is, that is probably the best Liam could do. When, let's say Liam Lawson was in the Red Bull this time last year when Red Bull had clearly the best car, Lawson, a lot of the time, would have just been completing 1-2 finishes for Red Bull in, Bahrain, Saudi, Suzuka also did a 1-2. That's all Lawson would have been doing, just finishing in second and completing 1-2s for the team. And then maybe in a couple other races, just getting on the podium. So, in terms of the results Lawson gets on his own, it depends on how good the car is. Lawson, I like Lawson. He's a good driver, but he's not good enough to the point where he's going to be getting the absolute maximum out of the car every single session like Max does. He's not on that level. He just isn't on that level. So, I think we need to be fair to Liam, at least to begin with. If the Red Bull is right on the pace of the other front runners and consistently fighting for wins and podiums with Max, that doesn't mean Liam should also be in the same position. Because again, Max is going to be at least half a second a lap quicker than Liam. But if Liam is, let's say Max is in that position, consistently fighting for wins and podiums, if Liam is getting knocked out in Q1, then obviously I'm going to criticize him because that isn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for Checo. It's not good enough for Liam. So, yeah. Nib saying, reporting the poll for hate speech against Australians. I don't know why YouTube only has 4 slots. If they allowed me to have as many as possible, I probably would have put an extra 3 or 4 drivers on there, to be honest. But, yeah. I mean, as Lewis Hamilton going quite wide and having quite a bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 1, which pretty much was caused by him going wide of the apex at the first corner. If McLaren do come away from this test as clearly the best team, then I think from then on, I'd definitely be putting Piastri in my thoughts and also in the polls as a clear contender for the championship. But even if, McLaren don't have the absolute best car by miles, with Oscar, I'm just hoping that he can step up consistently to that next level. I think that's really all I'm hoping for with Oscar, as Hamilton understeering slightly at turn 8 as he comes down into the downhill bumpy turn 9 and 10, which is so tricky, but Hamilton has dealt with it pretty well. As Lewis now up to turn 11. And, still too early to say in terms of the front runners who is where. As Lewis having to correct the wheel a couple times through turn, 14? No, turn 13 it was. Turn 14 is the final corner, which Lewis deals with very nicely. And he'll come to the line and improve and go up to P7, 0.8 of a second off the pace. But yeah, this season, obviously, was always going to be really, we were always going to have big hopes for this season because of how competitive the second half of last season was. But Hamilton going to Ferrari, especially, what do you call it? Especially if he can get back to his or near his best level, has really given this season the shot in the arm that we maybe not absolutely needed, but we ain't going to turn it down. And yeah, Hamilton, for some reason on the running order, they had him as 16th. But they've thankfully updated that now. So we've got Ocon on an outlap. Nico Hulkenberg is on a faster run. And so is George Russell in the Mercedes. Just noticing that it is just starting to get into that dusk period. But here comes Nico Hulkenberg, and yeah, he goes up to 14th place. I'll update that in a moment, as Oscar Piastri on the C2 compound has just gone up to 11th place, ahead of Isaac Hadjar. So let me just update some of these times. And actually, let me just put Piastri in place. And Hulkenberg as well. So Hulkenberg is up to, is in 15th. And let me just update these lap times again. As George Russell now 3rd. Just ahead of his young teammate by 0.03 of a second. They were very close, I think, yesterday as well, as Esteban Ocon on the C4 compound, which hasn't been used a lot in this test. Ocon goes 6th, which is clearly the fastest time Haas have done in testing, but still, I don't think anywhere near as good as they can do for real. So yeah, Russell 0.4 off the pace. And let me just, as quickly as I can, do these other timings, as Lewis Hamilton going deep at turn 10 and off the track, but slowly gets himself back on. So there's no problem there, as he probably will come back into the pits if he's locked up and damaged his tyres. KH saying, so Lawson is more to get the Constructors' Championship? No, I don't think so. I think, look, I mean, they had to get rid of Sergio Perez. He was finished. Perez might actually be on the grid, though, next year for Cadillac F1. But for Red Bull, the Perez era, it was over. Perez, he had, the era where, his first couple years where he was doing well, but the last couple years was nowhere near good enough. That was, very clear to see. And they had to replace Perez. Now, obviously, Ricciardo proven to be just not the Daniel Ricciardo of before. They refused to put Yuki Tsunoda in that car because they just don't have any long-term plans in regards to him. So then the only other option after that is Liam Lawson. And if Lawson can do great, then great. But as long as he's performing at a minimum level that they expect from him, then he'll do just fine. But Red Bull, unless Red Bull have clearly the best car on the grid by like a country mile, they're not going to win the Constructors' Championship. As Oscar Piastri slightly improves on his time, but stays in P11. As Yuki Tsunoda is still doing race runs, I believe. He's now down to 18th place because Lance Stroll has decided to do a bit more of a quick run. So let me just update that. As Pierre Gasly has done a purple first sector on the C3 compound. Looks like he is going for it. The best time Alpine have done in testing so far was a what was it? I think a 130.3. I think it was yesterday. It was a low 130. I remember that. So they're looking here to probably do their best time of the test. Yeah, a couple tenths up on his previous best, which obviously would keep him at the top. So this is going to be a personal best for Alpine in testing. Would be good for Alpine if they could end the test in the 129s. But they're not going to quite get there yet, I don't think. No, not a great final sector, but still improved by almost 0.2 of a second. Now to a 130.282. So now let me just redo all of those gaps. But yeah, the Alpine car looks, for the midfield, it looks good. I wouldn't say it's the best car in the midfield. I think that's probably Williams. But yeah, I think they've got a decent car, Alpine. One thing to mention with Alpine, though, is they've decided to keep the chassis from last year. So, yeah, that might hurt them in the second half of the season. But for now, yeah, they look like they're maintaining some of the form that they had at the end of last year. It's just a slow-mo of Lewis Hamilton going deep at turn 10. Didn't really lock up. He just went too deep and then decided to go off the track and just slowly come back on. As here's a replay of Russell coming into turn 10, trying to pass a Sauber. And just about doing it. Going around the outside, even though it was a bit close for comfort around the outside of Hulkenberg. But yeah, he got it done. Not quite sure why they're showing us so many replays of this. It's quite a nothing moment, to be honest. And I mean, they were close to contact, but they didn't end up hitting each other, so it was fine. Anyway, let me update the rest of these gaps. As Esteban Ocon is about to improve. He's currently 6th. And actually, did he improve his lap time? No, he did not. It was very slightly slower. I think only 100th of a second or something. Slower than what he had done before. As Oscar Piastri comes back in on his C2 compound of tyres. And yeah, let me just get these other times on the screen. So we've got 18 cars now having set a time. Obviously, Lawson for Red Bull and who else? Sainz not driving today. It's Gasly still out on track. I think just warming up maybe for another quick run. And there you go. Those are all the current order and times. So currently with 3 hours to go pretty much of pre-season testing, Pierre Gasly tops the timesheets with a 1:30.282. Leclerc half second back, and then you got Russell third, Antonelli fourth, and then Norris, Ocon, Verstappen, doing Hamilton and Albon. That's your top 10. But remember, that lap time from Gasly for 1:30.282 is not the best time we've had in testing so far. It's nearly a second slower than the best time we've had so far, which was Carlos Sainz yesterday for Williams, which was a 1:29.3. Sarah says constructors top three will be maybe McLaren first, Red Bull second, Mercedes third. I'd be very surprised if Ferrari finished outside the top three of the championship. That'd be incredibly disappointing. Nicholas says Charles and Lewis Hamilton are going to be amazing this year at Ferrari. I hope that this year is our year. It's been too long, and I think Charles is winning the championship this year. I mean, as long as we get a great season, that's all I care about. I don't hope that anyone particular ends up winning. But you know, if Ferrari ended up finally breaking the drought, I wouldn't hate it, of course, because eventually they've got to do it, and this year is as good of a year as maybe they've had in terms of chances in a while. KR saying it's settled. Gasly wins 2025. As George Russell has just done a purple first sector. Let's see what Mercedes are going to do. Mercedes, the best time they've done in testing so far has been a 1:29.7. Gasly, who's top of the timesheet, is half a second away from that. So, you know, Russell would have to do something incredible on this lap to beat that best time that Mercedes have done so far. But he is a couple tenths up on Gasly after the first two sectors. So this might just dip into the 1:29s or might just be a 1:30 point flat. Let's see. It's a 1:30.0 and George Russell is at the top of the timesheets in a Mercedes car that is looking decent. Again, I'm not going to go overboard. Again, their long run data from yesterday did look good, but I don't know. It just feels with Mercedes better than it felt a year ago. Not saying they're going to be winning the race, winning races and all of that, but they feel better than a year ago. That's just my feeling. But yeah, I'll update the gaps in a moment once they come away from the annoying double screen. But yeah, I'll just wait for them to come away from the double screen. They're just doing some analysis about the Red Bull, which still has not been on track this afternoon. And remember, obviously, Max is the driver that Red Bull have chosen for this, not just the afternoon session, but for the day. Just wanted to announce Nib will be coming on. Not quite yet. Probably in about an hour and a half from now. He'll be coming on to chat about testing 2025 and just, general thoughts going into the season. But, right, there you go. Finally, they've come away from the double screen, so I'll update the gaps now. But I will make sure to let you guys know when any team is going, quicker than they went so far in testing, and when they've done a personal best. Because that is really what we are looking out for. As Nico Hulkenberg is now on another run. And just completed the first sector. They're not showing any data for him, though. So, I'm not sure if he's actually going that quick or not. I guess we'll find out when he gets to the finish line. But yeah, your top 10. Russell, Gasly, Leclerc. And then Antonelli, Norris, Ocon, Verstappen, Doohan, Hamilton, and Albon. That is your top 10 with just under 3 hours to go. As Oscar Piastri now on an outlap. I'll update what gap he is behind once it shows. As Nico Hulkenberg about to improve. Is he? Nope, he actually goes exactly a tenth of a second slower than he did before. So, let me just do these final couple. Well, I can't do Stroll because he's on an outlap and it's not showing. So I'll wait till Piastri and Stroll finish their outlaps and I'll update the gaps. They are behind Russell. As Yuki Tsunoda, we're looking at on track, still doing a long run. He's been doing a long run for about, 45 minutes? Which would be, if we were 45 minutes into the Bahrain Grand Prix, it'd be like lap? I don't know, 25? Lap 25 to 30, something like that. So they'd be in the second stint by now. Yeah, Piastri in 11th, 1.5 seconds off the pace. So hopefully he'll go on a soft tyre and start to push a bit more. McLaren, yesterday, went slower than they did on day one. And currently, they've done, a 1:31.5, which is even slower, I think, than they were yesterday. So the best time they've done so far was on day one, which was a 1:30.3, I think it was. So, as a lock up there by Russell in turn 8. Here is Piastri. Still on, though, the C2 compounder. Stroll in 17th. Still on a long run. Piastri on a personal best, though, through the first sector. Looks like he is pushing to a degree. At least behind the wheel he is. And, 6.5 tenths off Russell after the first 2 sectors. So this will hopefully put him in the top 6. Just behind his teammate Lando Norris, who did a 1:30.9 earlier. And he's messed up the final corner. It's easy to mess up the final corner. It is difficult, especially with the wind at play, but he still goes 6th, just over a second behind Russell. So let me just update that. As Ocon back out on an outlap, I can see. And so is Lewis Hamilton. As Max Verstappen looks like he's just getting ready now. As the Red Bull car probably 30 to 40 minutes away from being seen back out on the track again. As here's a replay of Stroll at the final corner, completely missing the apex and going straight off the track. And yeah, proving to be difficult at the minute, that final corner. Don't know if there's a bit of a wind there, but yeah, as Lewis Hamilton went wide there at turn 1, we just saw as he opens the DRS. Looks like this might be a bit of a push lap from Hamilton. Ferrari's best time of testing so far is a 1:29.3, I think, as well. They were only slightly slower than Sainz yesterday. So, yeah, not really pushing so far, even though Hamilton has done a personal best first sector. As Lewis Hamilton comes up the middle sector point, only half a second off Russell, so this is probably going to put him in 3rd place ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc, who he was very close to on lap time yesterday. As long as he doesn't mess up the final corner, and he does not. He's been pretty good through that final corner today. Very, very good on that occasion. And he comes to the line and does go 3rd, 5.5 tenths off the pace. So improving is Lewis Hamilton, who, what was it? When I was doing some research into my Ferrari video, I obviously, was looking into some things regarding Lewis Hamilton, because obviously he is a factor for Ferrari in 2025. I cannot believe that he is actually 40 years old. It does not compute. One, he doesn't look like a 40-year-old. He doesn't have the life of a 40-year-old, which he was so keen to remind people of. In a quote I saw from him the other day about how he's so different from everyone else, which, to be fair, in terms of the life he lives, he is quite a bit different from pretty much everyone on the grid. Yeah, he's just not a 40-year-old to me. He feels a lot more like a 30-year-old or like a 32, 33-year-old. It is wild that he is 40 years old. And is, still going, still winning races. Obviously, last year won a couple at Silverstone and Spa. And if he can get back to his near his best level this year, maybe get another few wins and the elusive 8th championship. But yeah, he's now in 3rd place. And as I said in my Ferrari video, if he is back to pretty much his best, the first 2 tracks of the season, Melbourne and Shanghai, will show whether he is or not. Because those 2 circuits are some of his strongest that he's, had in his career. Melbourne, if the car's right there with him, he's always been super strong around that track. And obviously Shanghai, he's won there countless times. So we will see what Lewis Hamilton we will get in those first couple races, which thankfully are back-to-back. As Esteban Ocon has just improved up to 7th place ahead of Oscar Piastri, who's on a new lap now, but has not improved his first sector. Right. Let me just update some of these gaps now. Hamilton's up to 3rd. Esteban Ocon still on the C4 compound for that run, which again we've not seen a lot of. As Piastri 8th on the C2 compound. Piastri has just done a personal best middle sector, so he might slightly improve on this lap, but I'm not sure he'll actually go above Ocon, to be honest. As the top 10 now, Russell, Gasly, Leclerc, Antonelli, Norris, Ocon, Piastri, Verstappen doing. And well, Piastri was an 8th and has had an incredible final sector, a personal or a purple final sector, best of anyone, and he's now gone 5th on the C2 compound. Tyre corrected, that lap probably would have put Piastri in 2nd or 3rd place. But, yeah. Oscar up to 5th. McLaren car looking good. How good it really is, who knows exactly. Willifon saying Hamilton only has 2 wins at Australia. He does, but if you look at his pole positions, he is the most recent driver to really dominate at Albert Park. He had pole in 2008, 2012, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah. He absolutely ruled that circuit. And some of those pole laps, especially, I think, was it 2018, was, I think, easily the best of the lot, where I still don't know how he ended up 0.8 of a second, I think it was, ahead of the next car, which was the Ferrari, which, I mean, the Mercedes and Ferrari in 2018, in the first half of the season, were not exactly level, but they were in the same ballpark, but Hamilton did not make it look like that was the case on that day. And amazing to think that 2018 was 7 years ago. Where has all the time gone? But yeah, Piastri up to 5th, 3/4 of a second off the pace now. As Pierre Gasly goes back to the top of the timesheets by 0.014 of a second. So barely ahead, but he is ahead on a 1:30.040. As Lewis Hamilton was on a quick lap but is now backed off. Yeah, Neb saying Hamilton pole in 2017 is still insane. Really showed the true power of those cars for the first time. Yeah. Those laps were just incredible. And yeah, with those 2017 cars, it was, yeah, really special. As Max Verstappen is on the track, understeering his way through turn 13 and wiggling the steering wheel. But he's on track on the C2 compound. Is he improving? I don't think he will, as he understeers slightly at the final corner. And yeah, probably this will be a non-improvement, and yeah, half a second off the pace that he had done before. But at least he's on track for the final 2 hours and 45 of pre-season testing. as I'll just get all these other gaps updated now after Gasly returned to the top. But yeah, with Red Bull, still we have no idea where they're at, and we can't make any evaluation of them so far because McLaren and Ferrari and Mercedes, at least on the long runs, have shown us something. Red Bull have shown us absolutely nothing. Kind of like last year, but last year the reason they did that was because they knew they had easily the best car. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case now. I'm not sure that's necessarily why they're doing the run plan they are. It's just showing that moment at turn 13 for Verstappen where he had quite a wiggle on the steering wheel. As Hulkenberg is up now to 12th place, which I need to update, which I've not seen. Hulkenberg up to P12. 1.6 seconds off the pace. As Alex Albon is finally back out on track in the Williams. He's in the Williams all day. Yeah, let me just finish off these last few. Looks like Max is just starting a new run on the C2 compound. As Verstappen through turn 4. Looking all right. Don't know what the first sector time is, though. Now they're showing it. It was not a personal best. The only thing I've observed with the Red Bull is on board it looks very smooth, very comfortable. There's no handling issues that I've seen. Other than, Lawson, did have, as soon as I say that, Verstappen locks up and goes wide at turn 10. Lawson did have a spin on the exit of turn 2 on day 1. But other than that, like I said, on board, the Red Bull has looked very smooth to me. So, yeah. But remember, guys, as we go along, as we've still got another 2 hours and 40 to go, there is a poll running on the chat where I've asked you guys, who do you think will win the 2025 Drivers' Championship? Will it be Max Verstappen for the 5th year in a row? Will Lewis Hamilton win his 8th championship? Will Leclerc finally win his first for Ferrari and end Ferrari's drought? Or will Lando Norris win for McLaren? Let me know in that poll. Between now and when we finish up in 2 hours and 40 from now, as Yuki Tsunoda, who's been in the pits for a bit, is getting back in his car. He did a race run of, I think it was like 30 to 35 laps worth. Tsunoda gets into the Racing Bulls car. This might be Tsunoda's final year with the team. We don't know. But hopefully has another good season regardless. But one thing I did want to talk about, which it was just an idea I thought up a couple days ago. And it was something that I thought, let's talk about it on stream. With pre-season testing, obviously, a few years ago, it used to be in Barcelona, and it would be 2 4-day tests, which maybe you could say was a bit too much considering not a lot happens in testing. I remember I went to the second 4-day test in 2019, which I enjoyed quite a bit. The weather was great. It was, unlimited track action, not really that many people around, so you could really just go anywhere in the spectator areas and watch. It was very enjoyable. And then obviously we came to Bahrain. I think initially it was a 6-day test, and then they cut it down to just 3 days, which I think we've had for the last 3 seasons now. But I was just thinking, obviously, they've just done the F1 75 event and the O2 to celebrate the 75th year anniversary of Formula One. And, they had a great event at the O2 and it went well, even though I didn't watch it live. I saw certain bits and, yeah, it went well. It didn't seem to be a terrible event, which I think a lot were hoping it would be, or maybe even expecting it would be. But yeah, it went well. But what the point I'm trying to make is I get the feeling that with pre-season testing, I think Liberty Media could do a lot more with it. But you would have to get agreement for the teams to do or to run more mileage in testing, because honestly I think, and not for like, I'm not saying this would be like a month-long thing, but I think you could do 2 or 3 different pre-season tests at different tracks and like kind of go on a bit of a tour. I mean, kind of similar to football clubs when in pre-season they go on a pre-season tour. I think with F1 you could kind of do that, and it would actually be better for us fans because I mean, one, more cars on track, but also if they went to different types of tracks in terms of the layout, it would give us an even better understanding of who has a good car and who doesn't, because you've got this 3-day test at Bahrain. Even though, yeah, we're going to be racing in Bahrain in about 6 weeks' time, the first 3 races are at tracks that are not really that similar to this one. So, we may come up with a pecking order from this test, but it won't be that relevant necessarily in the first 3 Grand Prix. But I think, I just think there's more they could do with testing. Again, it would depend on the teams agreeing to do more running in testing, which maybe they would, only do that if there was a clear financial incentive. But yeah, I just think there's more they could do with it, because I'm not saying I don't like the 3-day preseason tests, but I just I really don't like the tests being in Bahrain. Not because they shouldn't be in Bahrain, but it's just the track. It's not really a good track for testing who has a good car or not. And also, I think Formula One is, as Lewis Hamilton, by the way, is on a new lap on the C3 compound. Also, from a spectator point of view, I don't think they get any spectators through the doors at testing here in Bahrain, which is, a missed opportunity to a degree for Formula One, but also a missed opportunity for the fans, because pre-season testing, normally, when I went in Spain, it was... I wouldn't say it was cheaper. It was an interesting deal that they did. in regards to whether you were able to go to testing. If you bought Grand Prix tickets, you were able to go to testing for free, essentially. I just think, from a spectator point of view, it's actually better if testing does or is in your area of the world. It is actually better to go to it maybe than certain days on a Grand Prix weekend, because again, there's less people around. You can roam around more, and just in general, it's quieter and calmer. Now, granted, you're not going to get any actual racing, but yeah. But yeah, that's maybe I've just had like as Lewis Hamilton there did not improve his time. And Lance Stroll, I've just seen, has gone up to 15th place, I believe. Yes, he has. Yeah, I know I didn't make an exact point there, but I think you see what I'm trying to say is I just feel like they could do more with pre-season testing just to make it interesting. Like I said, why not do a bit of a pre-season tour? And I mean, they used to do it where we would have pre-season testing at 2 different circuits. I mean, back in Spain, it would be Jerez and then it would be Barcelona. They were doing that as recently as like 2015, I think it was. We had testing in Jerez and then testing in Barcelona. I'm not saying we have to go back to those exact 2 tracks, but I just think, maybe 2 or 3 different pre-season tests at 2 or 3 different circuits would just make things a bit more interesting, because I don't think pre-season testing is at this point has become largely unwatchable. And I'm not saying it ever was watchable, but I'm just saying I think they could make it a bit more interesting than it is in its current, I guess, format, you would call it. Yeah, that's just my general thoughts about that. I mean, if this idea came to fruition, I mean, what I would have is like a 3-week period from, say, the last 3 weeks of February, where the first week you go testing for 3 days at, I don't know, some track, then the next week a different track, and then the next week a different track. And ideally, you would pick 3 tracks that are not a million miles away from each other, so you don't have to do you don't have to travel for absolute miles. Yeah, I just think that would be more interesting. Again, we as fans would find out more about the cars that way. As spectators, we'd probably actually be able to attend these events, and it would, be good from a spectator point of view in terms of pricing, because there's no way they're going to charge Grand Prix pricing if you attend a pre-season test which happens to take place at a track that will host the Grand Prix. There's no way they can get away with that. Yeah, I just think it'd be better doing something like that, because I just think, again, in its current format, testing is just, I mean, pre-season testing is boring a lot of the time. It always has been, but I think it's unnecessarily boring at this point with the format we have of, just 3 days in Bahrain where, there's no, this track is not really that good at determining or showing who genuinely has a good car or not. And it doesn't really test, all the areas of your car that, that you need to test out. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. I just think there's a lot more that could be done with testing. But, yeah. Let me just check Twitter to see if there is any news. And by the way, that incident earlier with the red flag, it was a shuttle bus driving across a runoff area. which of course is not allowed to happen. And that debris earlier, by the way, was broken glass, which I think the glass was from the little pod they have where they wave the checkered flag from. So yeah, there's been some ridiculous red flags. But yeah, just have a look on Twitter to see if there's any news that I haven't uh, brought you guys. And no, nothing I can see. So, the Woden says Spa and Zandvoort would be good testing tracks and are close to each other, one high downforce, the other low downforce. They would, but there's absolutely no chance you could do preseason testing in Spa because this time of year, Spa is unusable because of the weather. Snow, rain, it is way too cold. There's just no chance. It would have to be in places of warmer climate. So, I mean, if we had, I think if we were to do 3 tracks, let's say it was Europe, I think if we say started off with say Monza for 3 days, and then the next week went to Imola for 3 days, and then the final week of February went to the Circuit de Catalunya. I mean, going to those 3 tracks, they're all close enough for the teams that they don't. It's not a massive pain to travel. And all of those tracks would test out all of the areas of the car they need testing in terms of, obviously, reliability of the engine when it comes to Monza, and just the efficiency of the straight line speed of the car, and obviously the aero package when it comes to Imola and Catalunya. And you would get not an absolute shit ton of fans through the doors for testing, because obviously it takes place during the working day, but you would get a bit. I mean, look at what was it when Lewis Hamilton drove the Ferrari for the first time at the Ferrari test track? Look how many people were there. Are you telling me if you held a pre-season test at Imola, which by the way they used to do back in, I think, was it 2000? I think it was early 2000s. They used to do pre-season testing at Imola around this time of year. Are you telling me you wouldn't get quite a few fans through the door to see Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari in testing? Of course you would. And, extra money, extra publicity, it'd be, just more fun. So, like I said, there is more that could be done with pre-season testing, and I hope they do more with it, because, like I said, its current format is just boring as hell. And the only watchable part of testing is really these last 4 hours. But saying that, all we're doing is just sitting here hoping we're going to get fast runs, and there's no guarantee we will. So, yeah. See what I see says Red Bull car looks awful. I'm not sure what you are seeing, but awful is not the word I would go for. But and let's say they did do that. One 3-day test at Monza, then one at Imola, then one in Catalunya. I would probably end up going to at least one of those tests. So I mean, personally, I would benefit from that, because I would absolutely go and go see the cars, how they look. And again, if you are someone who is overwhelmed by massive crowds, and I definitely fall into that category. Even though I do go to football matches regularly, I still get overwhelmed by, the amount of people around, because yeah, that's just the way I am. Um, yeah, if you like it when there's less people around, testing is great for that. Like I said, when I went in 2019, it was great. You could watch the cars for hours, and there wasn't really that many people around, and you could just go to all the spectator areas and just sit and watch. I remember we went in one of the grandstands. I think that grandstand there is that overlooks the final sector, which if you look at my cover photo on my YouTube channel, there's a picture of the Ferrari, I think, which I took that picture. That's why it's my cover photo. And yeah, it was from me taking photos in that grandstand. And yeah, we were just sat there. We had the whole grandstand to ourselves, basically, just sat there in the blazing sun for the last couple hours watching the cars go past, and it was great. It's absolutely great. I loved it. I honestly, even though I enjoyed the Spanish Grand Prix of 2014, which is the only Grand Prix still I've only ever gone to, I enjoyed testing more than the Grand Prix, because again, it was just a lot calmer, less people around. You could actually watch the cars for longer, and I had a better experience. So yeah, if testing ever comes to near wherever you guys are, especially if you're in Europe, and if there are tickets available, go get them, because if you're willing to be there from the morning until until the last hour or so of the day, then it's great. Especially again if you're a fan of calmer environments. Testing at Manicore could be a thing, perhaps. Yeah, I mean you've got you've got that Valencia track which they use in MotoGP, or I don't know if they still use it, but yeah, what was it? I think F3 still raced there. Yeah, you got that track, and yeah, you got Manicore, Paul Ricard. That's a testing track. That's really what Paul Ricard is used for. Mainly is testing. It doesn't. I mean, they have plenty of racing, but a lot of testing, and obviously they've got a million different layouts. So yeah, I mean, ideally, if you're going to hold testing in Europe, like I said, if you go to 2 or 3 different tracks during like February and early March, you can make it a lot more fun pre-season testing than it is now. As George Russell was starting a lap, but then on a big snap of oversteer on the exit of turn 1. Yeah, the Woden says Portimao in Portugal. That's another track that has plenty of racing and plenty of testing. And I'd love to go back there, because I thought that was a really great track that was on the calendar for a couple of years. And what is it? Because I still occasionally play the F1 2023 game, not the 24 game, because the 2024 F1 game is absolute diabolical piece of shit game. Yeah, the F1 23 game obviously has that track on it, and I absolutely love driving at that track. It's just such a fun track. As yeah, George Russell's backed off, just saving his tyres, I think, before he cranks it up for a new run. Yeah, going pretty slowly as Russell, treating these like proper qualifying tyres. He is. As he's only 0.014 of a second slower than Gasly, so he doesn't have to do much to go back to the top of the timesheets with 2 hours and 20 minutes to go in pre-season testing. We've already got quite a way through this afternoon session. And really, not a lot's happened. Still, the only team going faster than their personal best times of testing as far is Haas. Everybody else still going quite a bit slower. Well, other than Alpine as well. Alpine have been going quicker by about a third of a second. But yeah, other than those two teams, everybody else is not really pushing. But we still have a bit more time to see whether we'll get some quicker runs, maybe some C4 tyres, which will help things. The C4 compound about half a second, around half a second quicker than the C3, and almost everyone has done a time on the C3. Esteban Ocon, the only one who's done a time on the C4. Now, talking of Ocon, he's on track on a long run on the C3 compound, which I think that's what he's going to do now. Probably for the rest of the day. As, yeah, I'm still not sure what to think of Haas, to be honest. They'll be in the fight, for sure, in the midfield, but where they'll be exactly, I'm not sure. I don't think they'll be as strong at a track like Melbourne or Shanghai, which, of course, are the first two tracks on the calendar. I don't think they'll be as strong there as they will be at a track like this. So, yeah. If they're not in the points in Melbourne, I don't think that's necessarily a surprise, especially with Williams' improvement. Willifon says, I don't get why people rate Albon so highly. Whenever he's under a bit of pressure, he cracks. I will admit, I've been very careful not to rate Albon too highly because of as Oscar Piastri, by the way, now out on track on C3 tyres, a step softer than he was on before, but I'm not sure if he's really pushing. We'll see in a moment. Let's just, no, he's not pushing. He's on a long run. Yeah, again, the reason I've not tended to rate Albon maybe as highly as others is again because of who his teammates were, and I've always wanted to see, what would Albon look like up against like a top midfield performer like a Gasly or an Ocon or a Sainz or a Perez, and that's what we're going to find out this year. And if Albon beats Sainz this year, then fair enough, he is a very good driver and deserves probably at some point to find his way back to a top team. But he's had some great results. We have to remember that in the last couple years, where you have to give him credit, even though his teammates are, where they are. But some of his results, I think, can be explained by the car being pretty quick. Some of them, I think you can definitely give him a lot of credit for in terms of him really digging out those results, but there are certain ones where the car was always going to be quick. Monza 2023 would be an example of that, where I think he finished in, was it 6th or 7th ahead of the two McLarens. The Williams was always going to be really quick that weekend because the car that season had unbelievable straight line speed. So yeah, that's an example of, good result, but I think if you put any other midfield driver in that car that weekend, they would have got a similar result to Albon. As Lewis Hamilton now on an outlap on the C3 compound, I believe. Or is it C4? Not quite sure. As Nico Hulkenberg's Sauber receiving a clean. I wish they could rub all the green off of it, but they're not going to. Right. Let me just go back to Twitter and see if there's any news. And no, can't see anything. As Lewis Hamilton, yes, is on the C4 compound. So here we go. This is the first very aggressive tyre run from a front-running team in testing so far. Will this be a personal best? Remember, Ferrari's best time of testing so far, a 1:29.3. But he's not done a personal best in the first sector. It's nearly 2/10 down on Gasly. That might be, though, because the Ferrari is not running quite on full power. Because remember, the first sector is really all about power and straight line speed. Hamilton definitely pushing, though, behind the wheel. That is clear to see. As he opens the DRS down to turn 11. Or up to turn 11, rather. As it climbs uphill. Tricky corner. But he handles it perfectly. Now up to the middle sector time beam. Still not improving, and I thought he went deep there, but I'm not sure if he did actually. Might just been the camera angle. As Hamilton up to the final corner, as darkness is beginning to descend, and once again kissing the apex of the final corner. He's handling that final corner so well, but does not improve his lap time despite being on a softer compound. But maybe Ferrari will know what the real lap time could have been. Maybe that was just a test. But there you go. What do you call it? Yeah, one more thing that I want to get into before we bring Nib on in 45 minutes or so is because obviously these are the final couple hours of pre-season testing. This is also the final live stream I am going to be doing until the Australian Grand Prix weekend. But I just want to announce, whilst I'm here, what my content plan is for between now and the first Grand Prix. And also I want to announce what my content plan is for the second and third Grand Prix of the season, because I have already decided on what my content plan is for those first three races. In terms of what the content plan is after that, it depends really on what's going on in the Formula One season. Whether, we've got a really competitive field, or whether, if there's a one team out front dominating all the time. Again, that is going to decide my schedule going forward after the Japanese Grand Prix. But yeah, let me get into what my plan is. So next week, ideally earlier in the week, but sometime next week, I will be uploading my review of pre-season testing. That'll be a recorded video, and what I'm going to do is just go through as much numbers as I can from the teams, from testing in terms of lap times, hopefully some long run data, the amount of laps completed. And what we'll try to do is try and form what I think the pecking order is going into the season itself. Then the following week, before we get to the Australian Grand Prix weekend, I will be uploading my full season, I guess, season preview, but really it's my final season predictions. Of course, I've done my early predictions for the season, which were done before we saw any pre-season testing. This video, which I'll be uploading, say, a couple days before the Australian Grand Prix weekend, will be my final predictions for the season based on what the order is and how I think it'll obviously evolve over the course of the season. So that'll be coming out, like I said, a couple days probably before the Australian Grand Prix weekend. And then the night before qualifying in Melbourne, it'd be Friday the 14th of March. On that evening, I will be doing a qualifying preview for obviously qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix. And then I will be live on Saturday and Sunday morning to do the watch along for both qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix, and then, of course, the race itself. Nib won't be joining me for that weekend because he'll actually be at the Grand Prix. He lives in Melbourne, so hopefully he has a great time. So yeah, that is the plan for the Australian Grand Prix weekend. And then for the Chinese Grand Prix, slightly different plan. I will be doing a qualifying preview on the Friday night, but I will not be doing a watch along for qualifying. But I will be doing a watch along for the race. And the same plan I will be doing for the Japanese Grand Prix as well, where I'll be doing a qualifying preview on the Friday night. Then I will be missing qualifying, but then doing a race watch along on the Sunday morning. The reason I'm missing qualifying for China and Japan is because, of course, the first 3 races are early morning races. And obviously I'm willing to do it for Melbourne because it's the first Grand Prix of the season, but I don't want to really exhaust myself, considering that I've got a lot of uni work to do in the next few weeks. And waking up at that time in the morning is very exhausting, especially when you're streaming for 3 or 4 hours. So that is why I will only, for the Chinese and Japanese Grand Prix, be doing a race watch along, not a qualifying watch along. But for the first Grand Prix, I'll be doing both a qualifying and race watch along. And then, like I said, after the Japanese Grand Prix, my content plan for the rest of the races depends on what's going on in the Formula One season. If we've got a team dominating out front, then I'll probably cut down on the amount of watch alongs I was planning to do originally. But if the season is as competitive as we hope it will be, with 3 different teams fighting for the championship, then I will be doing quite a lot of watch alongs. Not a watch along for every qualifying race, of course, but still quite a lot moving forward after the Japanese Grand Prix. So yeah, that is the plan. Obviously, there will be the odd recorded video along the way, during the season when I've got the time to do it. But yeah, in terms of the plan between now and the Australian Grand Prix, that's what the plan is. So, like I said, my next live stream will be in exactly 2 weeks from now, which will be the night before qualifying in Melbourne. So that's my next live stream. But in between then, there'll be 2 videos. One reviewing testing, one previewing and me predicting the Formula One season. As Max Verstappen, your 4-time world champion, has done a purple first sector, and looks like Red Bull have decided to let go and push a bit. As Verstappen, purple first sector, but a 10th down on Gasly after the first 2 sectors. So Red Bull still not pushing as hard as they could. The best time Red Bull have done so far in testing was Liam Lawson yesterday, did a 1:30.1, I think it was. What's Max done here? He's done pretty much, the same lap time. And goes 3rd. So matching the best time they have done so far. And that was on the C3 compound from Max. And we'll see if he decides to go for any more quick runs. Let me update some of the gaps now that Max has moved up. As Red Bull looks like they're probably going to bring Max in. As we're now looking at Oscar Piastri, who's on the C3 compound. But I'm pretty sure he's he's still doing his race run. So not really sure why we are paying attention to him, but we are. On the F1 broadcast, at least. But there you go. Only a 10th separating the top 3. As we've got just over a couple hours to go. Again, ideally, I would like to stream until the very end of the session, but as I did last year, and as I said at the start of this stream, if it does become clear in, say, an hour from now that the teams are not going to do a load of fast runs at the end, then I will probably bring the stream to an early close because I don't want to waste my time watching teams doing long runs. But we'll see. But I will still be live at least for another hour because obviously we're going to bring Nib on in about half an hour. And yeah, we'll see what the teams do. I mean, darkness is descending. The track getting into that part, or that temperature and grip level that it would normally be at for a Grand Prix weekend. And the Bahrain Grand Prix, yeah, in 6. Is it 6 weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Bahrain Grand Prix is 6 weeks from now in terms of the weekend. And then that is actually Bahrain in the middle of a triple header. Because first we'll be at Suzuka, then a week after Bahrain, and a week after that, Saudi Arabia. Which Saudi Arabia will be taking place for us on Easter weekend. And before the end of April, we would have had, 5 races already. As Piastri continues on, McLaren car looking pretty comfortable on its long run. The Wodus's predictions for the fastest lap of the session. Because the fastest lap so far was a 1:29.3, the fastest lap so far, that is, of testing. I did say at the start of the stream that I thought today the absolute best time we could get was probably a 1:28.7, maybe a 28.8. But looking at the running so far, I'm not sure we're going to see teams going for a 1:28. Remember, pole position at this Grand Prix last year was a 1:29.1. So I think pole position in 6 weeks' time at this track is probably going to be a 1:28.5 or a 1:28.6, something like that. And yeah, these times you're seeing, with Gasly and Russell and Verstappen, those are lap times that would be good lap times for practice 1. But I'm pretty sure if this was practice 2, they'd be in the mid, maybe even low 1:29s. Like they were, to be fair, yesterday. So, in terms of the lap times that have been set, the aggression level is, at like a Friday practice 2 level at best. But yeah, for qualifying in 6 weeks' time here in Bahrain, like I said, it's going to be probably a mid 1:28, maybe even lower. As Hamilton is on, or back out there on another set of C4 tyres, I think it is. Hamilton currently in 4th. Obviously, he did do a lap a moment ago on the C4, but didn't improve. That's why he's still showing us having done his best time on the C3. As we're exactly halfway through this afternoon session and just 2 hours to go for the teams to find out any more about their cars before we see them around the streets of Albert Park. But here comes Hamilton. DRS open. Fresh C4 tyres these are. Let's see what he's going to do. As he turns in pretty aggressively. Turn 1. Slight correction on the exit, but nothing too bad. And Sky F1 decide to go to an ad break. Fucking brilliant timing. There hasn't been one ad break so far in this afternoon session, and they decide to put it right when Lewis is on a quick run on the C4 compound. Just brilliant. That is exactly why I pay hundreds a year to this fucking organization. Christ, honestly. So yeah, we'll have to wait, obviously, until they come back. That is, yeah, just an absolute joke. And I mean, to be fair, I mean, like with Sky F1 and their, Formula One coverage, I mean, the reason I pay for Sky Sports is it's not just for Sky Sports F1. Unfortunately, you can't do that. If you pay for Sky Sports, you've got to have the whole package, which people moan about how much it costs, but to be fair, considering all the sports they have, it is good value for money, the amount that you have to pay per month. But I do hope that, especially with streaming services now, as Lewis Hamilton, by the way, did improve with that lap by a quarter of a second, but he stays in fourth place. So just letting you know about that. Let me just update that lap time, as he's now only 3/10 off the pace on C4 compound, but still way away from the best time Ferrari have done in testing. Yeah, the whole Sky Sports package is, like I said, it is good value for money with the quality of the coverage and the amount of sports they have. Obviously, football, tennis, Formula One, and just all the stuff they have. But in terms of the Formula One coverage, obviously, this is 13 years in to Sky F1 having the exclusive rights, and I just feel like there needs to be a change, because I don't feel like Sky F1's coverage is getting any better. It's not. I mean, sometimes their coverage is good. It depends really on what pundits they have available to them at certain times or at certain Grand Prix. But I just think, looking now at the streaming service era, where you've got Amazon Prime showing sports, you obviously got Discovery Plus, obviously Netflix are now stepping forward into the live sports and entertainment realm. Obviously they've got that exclusive WWE deal, and they had the boxing event with Mike Tyson and Jake Paul a few months ago. I just feel like it's time for Formula One to go to streaming services. And I hope, because I think Sky F1, let me just see when their current deal ends. I think it's like 2032 or something, which is what, like 7 years away. Sky Sports F1 deal. Oh, right. So it's actually until 2029. So Sky Sports will be the exclusive home of F1, and in the UK and Ireland until 2029, and then Sky Deutschland and Sky Italia retain rights until 2027 with greater exclusivity. So yeah, I mean, I just think for the next decade, considering streaming services are taking over, let's be honest, in terms of the sports game, they're taking over. And eventually, in 20 years, Sky Sports will not be able to compete with Netflix and Amazon Prime and Discovery Plus. They just won't be able to compete because the amount of money that Netflix and Discovery Plus and and Amazon have is more than what Sky have. And Sky, the reason they don't have the rights to like all sports and all competitions is because they really have to play around with what they can, what they can afford. And I think as time goes on, Sky are going to start losing rights to, to a lot of deals or sports packages they have. And honestly, I hope that for the next decade, starting in 2030, I hope that the Formula One coverage, at least here in the UK, goes to Netflix. Because, like I said, it's clear that the streaming service era, is here, and they are taking over in the sports TV rights or sports broadcasting rights game. They're taking over. In the same way that Sky Sports 30 years ago, even not just 30, but say in that 20 to 30 year ago period, Sky Sports completely took over the sports broadcasting game. That's what now Netflix, Amazon, and Warner Brothers Discovery are now doing. So, and these services are better. They, they cost less in terms of subscription, to watch what they have compared to obviously the Sky Sports package. And I think the coverage will probably end up being of the same quality, if not better. So the point I'm trying to make is, as Max Verstappen does dip into the 129s, first driver to do it, 129.8, the best lap time Red Bull have done in testing, which is still half a second off what Williams and Ferrari were doing yesterday. The point I'm trying to make is I hope that this current deal that Sky F1 are on is the last one that they are on. And I hope that in 2030, which might even be the start of a new set of regulations in Formula One, the next one after obviously this, engine stuff we've got next year, I'm hoping 2030 will be the Netflix era of Formula One coverage, because in terms of how it's progressed here in the UK, obviously it was free to air for years. It was on the BBC, then it went to ITV with ad breaks, then went back to the BBC, and then the new era of pay to watch TV for Formula One came in with Sky taking the exclusive rights in 2012, and they've had it for quite a while. And like I said, I think the next era for Formula One coverage is the streaming service era. And I've even seen reports that Netflix are interested in, attaining the full broadcasting rights for Formula One. Of course, they've got Drive to Survive, so they've already fully dipped their toes in to the swimming pool that is Formula One. And I just hope that that they decide to go for it and bring Formula One to to Netflix completely. And like I said, hopefully in 2030, that streaming service era for broadcast rights in Formula One will begin. Because if you look at the history of broadcasting, obviously you had, the radio to the TV, and then it went from free to air to pay TV, and now it's from pay TV to now streaming services. As we saw with the pay TV era, initially they started to get rights to things, obviously like Sky with the Premier League and all of that. But eventually they gobbled everything up, and it became, if you wanted to watch sports, you had to have Sky. Eventually, for sports, it's going to become like that with Netflix, Amazon, and Discovery Plus. You're going to have these streaming services if you want to watch sport in 20 years, because all of the sport will be on those streaming services or any new ones that might come out. TV is dying and has seen its best days. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that Formula One are not going to stick around on TV for too long, because I think there's a lot more they can do with the coverage and their spread in terms of, publicity. I think there's a lot more they can do if they were on, say, Netflix compared to what they're on now. Because, I mean, look what, and I know WWE is not, a real sport, but look what that's done for WWE in terms of increasing their audience since they started in the new year. It's done wonders for them. I mean, the audience hasn't, exploded, but now they're in a much more visible location, especially internationally, than they were before, where the rights to certain shows was on different channels and all of that. Now it's all in one place. Now they're doing better than ever. And for Formula One, if all Formula One coverage was on Netflix internationally, then, like I said, that could really help their I guess, global PR spread, if you know what I mean. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of my dreams. I won't say dreams, but I just really hope that Sky F1's coverage comes to an end and that Netflix take over, because I just, that's the way the world's going. TV in 20 or 30 years, nobody's going to watch TV, really. So, that's the way we're heading, and we need to just evolve in that direction as quickly as possible. That's just the way I see it. But anyway, Max Verstappen is now at the top of your timesheet on a 1:29.844, I think it is. As Oscar Piastri is still on a long run. He's doing similar times to what Lando did yesterday. Yesterday. So, yeah, looking good there for McLaren. Will F1 says TNT Sports would be the best place for F1, to be honest. It would not. If that was the only other option, then it may as well stay on Sky F1, because TNT would not make a dedicated Formula One channel. And at least with Sky F1, you can't deny their dedication towards Formula One coverage. I mean, ever since they had the coverage, they've had the dedicated channel, and have given a lot of time towards it. TNT would just have it along with the rest of what they've got. They wouldn't have a dedicated channel for it. So no, and as well, TNT Sports, a lot of their coverage is absolute shit anyway. So I hope they don't get it. I mean, they are part of Discovery Plus, so technically it would be like a streaming service thing. But yeah. Will F1's also saying Netflix would just be shit and ruin all F1 coverage, and for good. Why? Why do you say that? I mean, if you don't like the stuff Netflix produces, that's your opinion. I'm not a fan of everything they produce, but I think a lot of what they produce is really good, and it's way better than stuff you get on TV. Again, there's things they get wrong in terms of cancelling shows that have still, got more legs in it. And maybe certain shows that do actually get the green light probably, you could argue don't deserve to. But in terms of quality, compared to TV, yeah, it's not debate as far as I'm concerned. Netflix is way better than television, and that's why they've got so many millions of tens of millions of subscribers. But yeah, let me just do these gaps and then I'll come back to some of your comments. And of course, in about 20 minutes or so, I'll bring Nib on. But yeah, continuing to do these lap times. I'm trying not to leave the mic silent for too long because I don't want to give the impression that I'm not here. But yeah, I'm just trying to obviously do these times. I'll try to speak when I can, as I don't think there's been any further improvements. I'm looking at the field. As Lance Stroll is actually now in P12. That is one change that I need to update. And there you go. Aston Martin have not really shown us a lot in testing, which, it's their choice, their prerogative. And let me just do these final 3 lap times. And there you go. Yeah, there you go. So, 1 hour and 40 minutes to go in pre-season testing for 2025. And Max Verstappen at the top of the timesheets, as usual. 129.8. Still quite a bit slower than the best time we've seen in testing so far, though. So that does not mean Red Bull have suddenly got a load of pace. Even though that is their best time of testing so far, it's nowhere near the best. Gasly second, Russell third, Hamilton fourth, Leclerc fifth, Piastri sixth, Antonelli seventh, Norris eighth, Ocon ninth, and Jack Dewett in 10th. Of course, Dewett not in the car this afternoon. Gasly is the one in the car. Crystal Racing says you may as well broadcast half of the races on free-to-air TV again if TNT got the contract. Exactly. TNT are pretty shit in terms of their it's not necessarily their coverage in terms of what they show. It's the punditry of what they got on football. Just the quality of the coverage in terms of from the build up to certain events and the analysis, all of that stuff compared to Sky is, they're terrible, absolutely terrible. And probably the worst, if you look at the football, all the different TV channels that show football. You've got Sky, TNT, ITV, and BBC. TNT are the worst in terms of quality. Easily the worst. I'd say probably Sky number 1, BBC number 2, ITV number 3, and then TNT number 4. Yeah, there's rarely anything great that TNT have. So, like you said, I may as well go back to just half the races on free to air and half on TNT, because TNT would just be terrible. And like I said, if that's the only other option, you may as well just keep it with Sky, because at least their coverage is better and they've got a dedicated F1 channel. And TNT, I don't think would just take all of the Sky crew. They'd probably, trying to implement some of their own, which would be terrible, because if you go and look at the choices of pundits and analysts they have on the football coverage, it's almost entirely dog shit. There isn't really any good pundits on any of the football coverage, and it's because they're terrible at choosing pundits. I'm sure there's pundits out there they can find for football coverage which are good, or at least decent. But yeah, TNT, almost all of their pundits are just absolutely terrible. And as well, some of the commentators they have, absolutely terrible. So, yeah, I really hope that doesn't happen. Will F1 says, look at the damage Drive to Survive has done to the sport. In terms of the type of fans we have, I can understand what you're saying, but Drive to Survive, as much as we might not like it, factually, it has done a lot of good for Formula One. It's increased the viewership, it's increased interest in Formula One. Yeah, do they dramatize and lie a bit to make things seem a bit more Hollywoodish? Yeah, of course they do. And that's why I personally don't like it. But it has brought in more viewers. And at the end of the day, more viewers equals, more money, and is better for Formula One if more people are watching. That's reality. With any sport, anything that appears regularly on TV, the more, or just anything that appears on any sort of broadcast, the more viewers you can get, the better. That's that's how it works, really. Frank Trigg says Netflix are going downhill compared to Apple TV recently for quality TV shows. Apple TV's another one who I've heard. Obviously, Apple TV. I think aren't they? They're in. They're part of the. I don't know if part of the production is the right way of saying it, but they are involved, I'm pretty sure, with the F1 film that's coming out this year with Brad Pitt. So maybe F1 would look to them if they were to go with a streaming partner. But yeah, I don't have Apple TV, so I can't comment on the quality of the shows and quality of content on Apple TV. But like I said, there's a lot of stuff on Netflix which is really just filler and not that great. But I think there's also still a lot of really good things on there. So, yeah. And I still think Netflix are... I would still say the kings of the streaming service game in terms of quality. Maybe the quality of their content was better a few years ago, but I don't think anyone else has, over a long enough period, proven to be a lot better than what they do. So, yeah, Netflix, it has its issues. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I still think they are still the best in terms of quality of content. Will, Will F1 says, you may as well bring back BBC 90s coverage if you want all coverage on Netflix. I don't know if you... I just don't know why you think that. I don't know why you think Netflix would give such little of a fuck about Formula One to give it such little coverage. Because the BBC wouldn't really... back then, all they had was a presenter, which was Steve Ryder, and then obviously Murray Walker, Jonathan Palmer, obviously James Hunt, who were technically analysts and obviously did their commentary role. But the coverage was, in terms of before and after and around Formula One, it was very sparse. I don't know why you think that would be the same with Netflix. I think if Netflix had the exclusive rights, I think they would be keen to do a lot of stuff post race surrounding Formula One, special programs, special events, maybe documentaries, for example. I mean, there's already been, the Michael Schumacher documentaries on there. Obviously, I think the Senna documentary's on there somewhere. They'd probably want to delve more into the documentary side in terms of, advertising Formula One by telling some of the great stories that maybe deserve a Netflix documentary. And there are some stories in Formula One that absolutely deserve a Netflix documentary. The story of Williams racing, I think, is a Netflix documentary. Even though I think there is an actual documentary about, is it about Frank Williams? I think you could do another, I think a Netflix one. You could do a Netflix documentary about, drivers that obviously, died whilst racing. Niki Lauda, for example. Obviously, he didn't die whilst racing, but you could easily do a documentary on his life, which was very eventful, and there's lots of stories there to tell. So yeah, there's lots of things, not just with showing the live coverage of Formula One. There's lots of things they can do with the rights to Formula One, to broadcast Formula One stuff. There's lots of things Netflix could do, which I think would help the increased viewership, but also the quality of the production around Formula One. Sarah Gara says F1 TV is too exclusive. That's my slight gripe with it. It's not adventurous enough. F1 TV is good, but I think, like you said, it's not adventurous enough. But the problem with F1 TV is it's kind of like the like when the WWE had their own network, where it's great in terms of they've got all this library of stuff and different content that you can watch that you don't get on TV. But there's lots of stuff they could do which they don't do because they're still the decider of what you watch on there a lot of the time in terms of the coverage you get. When again with Netflix, I think there would be a lot wider. There'd be a lot of different ideas. Will F1 is absolutely nailing himself to the cross on this point, saying Drive to Survive has ruined F1. Netflix getting the coverage would be the final nail in the coffin. You're just absolutely wrong. I'm sorry. Drive to Survive maybe has brought about some fans that are a bit cringeworthy and maybe have certain thoughts and expectations about Formula One which we don't like, but come on. Ruined F1. We've still had some great on track. We still have some great Formula One seasons. It's it's not been affected by Drive to Survive. And trust me, Netflix would not be the final nail in the coffin. It just would not. It's funny because, and I mean, it's for different reasons, but the same used to be said about coverage of football back in the, in the, what do you call it, like late 80s, early 90s, that if football became a widely televised, especially live, if football became widely televised, then it would kill football. Now, there are issues with the footballing system in this country that have been present ever since the creation of the Premier League, and obviously Sky getting involved in terms of, payments and help financially through the pyramid system, and stuff like that. But I think overall, wider coverage which Sky gave football and the Premier League, overall I think there's been a benefit to the sport rather than a negative, especially in this country. So I think, even more coverage and different types of ideas to try and promote Formula One. In, like I said, documentaries, um, special events that they could broadcast. It, I think, absolutely would help the what do you call it, the promotion of Formula One. Now, whether these events or documentaries would be good or not is a different question, but if they were to be good, absolutely it would help Formula One's level of popularity. And if you don't want Formula One to be popular or get more popular, then I don't really understand why you want Formula One. And I'm not saying, I'm not to Will, I'm not saying that this is what you're saying at all. I'm just saying this to anyone in general, that if you don't want Formula One to become more popular and better in terms of how it's broadcast and all of that, then I don't really understand why you watch Formula One. Because, yeah, we enjoy the racing and all, but there's more to just the on-track action. But, as Nib said in the chat, perfect time for him to come on, and it is. Let me just grab... hold on. Before I bring you on, mate, I'm just going to quickly update the order, because I've just seen Alex Albon has just magically gone up to 4th place. So let me just update this and the gaps, and then I'll bring you on. And yeah, Albon, not sure what compound he was on. C3 it says, I think. Is it C3? No, it's C4. So Albon has done a what time is that? A 1:30.2, I think it is, on the C4 compound, which is about a second slower than they were yesterday on a harder compound, or a softer compound, sorry. So yeah, still pushing nowhere near as quickly as they can go. Max Verstappen, by the way, is on an even quicker lap, possibly. He's done a purple middle sector. Does he go quicker? Yes, he does, by 0.045 of a second. Max Verstappen does a 1:29.799. So now I've got to update all of the gaps yet again. So let me just do this. Then, like I said, I'll bring Nib on. Yeah, like I was saying a moment ago, though, I think there's plenty of good stories you could tell through the the art of, Netflix documentaries. And Netflix do some absolutely brilliant documentaries. That's, I think, probably what they are best at, is the documentary stuff. Especially, because they've obviously got the time or the ability to do more than one episode. And you can watch all the episodes at once. Then you can, it helps in being able to learn the stories. But right, let me just update these other gaps as Lewis Hamilton is out on track on a set of C3 tyres, which he's actually on a race run, is Lewis. So we'll ignore that. Right, hold on. Just got to do the bottom half of the order now. Your top 10, by the way, with an hour and 20 minutes to go. Verstappen at the top, Gasly second, and then Russell, Albon, Hamilton, Leclerc, Piastri, Antonelli, Norris, and Ocon. That is your top 10, which I don't think is really going to change around in these next hour and 20. Yeah, let me just get these final few done as Hamilton continuing on with his long run that we're just seeing on the F1 broadcast. And there you go. As we've got a yellow flag briefly, but it's gone away. But yeah, let's now bring Nib on and what do you call it? Let me just make sure my settings are correct, because I did update OBS a couple days ago, which can only mean one thing, that it's going to be a disaster. But I mean, my mic's fine, but I'm just hoping that Nib will be easily heard on stream and there won't be any issues. Anyway. Let me open up Discord. And bring him on. Right, are you there?
Hello.
Oh, as I thought, I can't hear you.
Well, as you can see from Discord, my mic is all good.
I think,
so...
what do you call it? They can hear you, I think, because you're coming through on my OBS, but I can't hear you. So hold on a second.
Plastic. This
And
is
let me know in the chat, guys, if you can hear him. But he is on the voice thing. It says that he is. Right. Keep speaking if you can. I guess I can hear you at some point. Right, now, right, hold on. I've got so go again.
Alright, hello.
There you go.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Now they can hear you and I can hear you.
Very good.
Right, how are you?
I am pretty well, mate. What about yourself?
Yeah, okay. I was just bored, really, because nothing's happening in this session.
Yeah.
There's no real. I think yesterday was the day where they all went aggressive, but yeah, today they're just going for the longer runs. Yeah. What did you think of what I was saying about the whole Netflix thing in terms of? Because I mean, it's going to happen eventually. F1 is going to be on streaming services at some point, whether it's 2030, 2035. It's going to happen eventually. Are you keen for that, or do you hope that it doesn't quite come that soon, say 2030-ish?
Well, I think we talked about this like briefly a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
Um, for me, I already watched it on a streaming service. Now, mind you, it is like um Sky's equivalent in the UK, in Australia's Foxtel.
yeah.
They have their own streaming service, which I pay to watch, which is, by the way, $40 a month now. Um, Absolutely insane. Um, they used to have so much sport on this. They used to have the Australian football. They used to have like beIN Sports, which would show the Europe, the European football, obviously not the Premier League and stuff like that.
Mm.
They've lost so much content. It's $40 a month, but it's inevitable. And I mean, I think we've seen it recently with WWE all moving onto Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, and that's been great.
Yeah, it's been
And
a lot better for them, especially financially.
yeah, it just I think it would be better for people who just want to watch F1, and obviously F1 has a far-reaching global audience already, but moving on to Netflix would only expand that. And sure, they can over dramatize shit on DTS, and us proper fans know well and truly that DTS is just a load of crock. Um, but they're not gonna always just sort of pander to that audience if they actually had to do an official, proper broadcast style
Mm.
presentation of the product. Like, I think that's just not what would happen. I understand like why Will has those fears, but I think they'd get absolutely crucified if that was to happen.
Yeah, they would, and I don't think the deal would. It probably only last, the one time they signed it. I don't think they'd be extended if the fan base legitimately hated, the coverage that much. But yeah, with Sky, like I said, eventually things are going to move to streaming services. But I just feel like with Sky's coverage, I mean, like it's good when they've got like Rosberg on and Jensen Button and people like that, but it just feels very tired to me, their
Yeah,
coverage. They haven't really tried anything new for a long time with the coverage, and also the Sky F1 channel. They haven't really done anything with it. Like initially, obviously they'd have classic races. One series I did like was they had that one with Steve Ryder, where he would interview like ex drivers or people in and around F1, like he did one with Max Mosley years ago. Did a really good interview with Alain Prost. They've just cut away from all of that, and all you get is just the live coverage, and then obviously all of their build up and all of the reaction, which goes on just way too long, I think. Um, and I mean, we've even seen last year what was it? I think a few of the early races they didn't even bother going out to them. They just covered them from the
yeah.
studio. I think the Asian ones, and they just sent like two or three of their personnel out there. So yeah, it just feels like they're not really maybe as motivated or whatever with the coverage as maybe they were, 10 years ago or whatever. But yeah, eventually, whether we like it or not, whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Discovery, it's gonna happen. not just for Formula One, but every single sport is eventually, in some way, shape, or form, it's going to be on streaming. So yeah, it's something that we all have to face. Going forward, as I was just saying, Alex Albon is on a attempted quick lap, but he just had a big oversteer moment. Yeah, with testing so far, I think, like you said, you've not watched anything, have you? Is
Not
that
really.
in terms of, have you looked at any of the data either, or have you not bothered with that either?
um, really only what you sort of sent me as I woke up
Yeah,
this morning with some of the long run stuff. But apart from that, not an awful lot.
yeah. As Albon did a purple final sector, but no improvement there. With
Will's
Willie,
favorite Williams driver.
as Albon, yeah, is what's he sort of 130.1, in case anyone wants to know the exact lap time he's done. He's currently in fourth place. With Williams, they've been probably the only team that has shown any difference compared to last year. They've looked like a lot quicker than a year ago. Sainz yesterday was nearly a second quicker than Williams's best lap time or time in qualifying at this track. Where do you think Williams are likely, like, I don't know, best of the midfield, or do you think they're maybe in between the front runners and the midfield, if you were to guess? But obviously, I know you've not looked at a lot of data, but from that type of improvement, surely they're at least at the front of the midfield, you would imagine.
I would say they've at least made a step forward because I think that if Williams are improving by a second, you'd hope that some of the other teams are improving by that much as well. I mean, just briefly before Aston Martin was shown on the screen, and you know, they didn't really do an awful lot of that last year, did they? They
No.
didn't do much improving at all around certain tracks. Um, but I mean, if we can get another team sort of pushing the midfield forward, I mean, I'm not going to be mad at that. That's for sure. So if Williams are improving, that would be good because I mean they do have a solid driver pairing. Um, that can sort of push for points pretty consistently. You'd imagine if they have a good car.
Absolutely. And with their driver lineup, obviously we're a couple weeks away from the season. How do you think that lineup's going to go? Do you
Yeah.
think Sainz is definitely the clear favourite, or do you think Albon will surprise us all?
Now, science is that guy. I mean, you say a couple of weeks, mate. It's 2 days and sorry, 2 days, 2 weeks, and it's qualifying day.
Yeah, God, can't wait.
So it's right around the corner.
Especially with um like how close the field was at times last year. I can't wait. Especially with I think last year's Grand Prix we had a pretty, remember, in qualifying it was pretty
It was two
competitive
tenths.
through.
It was two
Yeah,
tenths, like most of the top six.
yeah, and like
It was really close.
even the midfield, there was like a lot of like odd cars in there. Like Mercedes obviously had a poor start last year, and they were pretty much in the midfield. So yeah, I really hope we can get like a really close, exciting, and even maybe surprising, top 6, 7 on the grid. That'd make for hopefully a fun Grand Prix. But yeah, Sainz, as long as I think you'd probably agree, last year was probably the best year of his career, getting the couple wins, and the form he was in was, I think, about the best really you could expect from him most of the time. And as long as he maintains that, unless Albon goes absolutely mental this year and shows that, he is actually really good, then yeah, it should be Carlos Sainz's year at Williams, and really should be his team in terms of him being the leader now going forward. Especially if Williams next year with the Mercedes power unit, if they are, in like the top 3, 4 on the grid in terms of top 3 or 4 best teams, Sainz probably will remain at Williams, I think, for a few years to benefit from that. But if Albon, let's say Albon, I don't know, let's say he matches Sainz or just about beats him, do you think that guarantees eventually a return to maybe a Red Bull or maybe a front running seat somewhere if it becomes available?
I don't think so. I think once you're out of a top team, it's pretty difficult to fight your way back in. Um, I mean, Red Bull wanted to get Danny Rick back in there desperately, but it just didn't work out. I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if Science was able to get himself back up into a top team. And just some little info: Stroll has packed it in for the day because he's still feeling unwell. So Alonso will be doing the rest of the running for today.
Oh, good.
Um,
Yeah, he's just coming out now.
Yep, that was perfect timing. But I just want to go back onto your Sky F1 point. I think that's also a factor. Um, perhaps Sky aren't willing to pay Alonso, Rosberg and Jensen the money to go out to all of these Grand Prix. Whereas I don't think that's a limitation with Netflix.
No.
Um, I feel like the the pre-race stuff could really be stepped up. And I feel like, when Sky first got the coverage, their analysis of quali laps, I mean, Anthony David still does a great job now on the Sky pad, but back then that was really groundbreaking stuff because it's not stuff that you'd really seen before.
Mm.
And I feel like that could be added a lot more because, now it's a lot more of the F1 TV with Julian Palmer and I forgot the guy's name.
Oh yeah.
One of the
Is
journalists,
it Sam something?
Sam Collins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's sort of more on F1 TV, and I feel like they've got a lot more of the analytical stuff now. Whereas I feel as if the official broadcast could perhaps take a bit more of a leap in that direction as well. So I just think that I do think that we need quite a bit of a freshen up in terms of what we're shown. And I feel like Netflix could really deliver that.
As well with Netflix, I mean, they would go for like if they could as like star-studded a crew as they could. Like, I mean, they'd probably Rosberg and Button would probably definitely be in there. I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm trying to think who might retire between now and then, at the end of the decade, um, who might do a punditry job, but they would likely go for as bigger names as possible, and not just as bigger names, but the best pundits and just best crew that they can find, which is pretty much what Sky did when they started in 2012. They basically got all the best that they could find at the time, and then all brought them obviously together in 2012. Like you said, the Skypad stuff back then, no one was doing that stuff with the Skypad in Formula One. It was, I mean, the BBC F1 coverage, to be honest, was pretty um, simple compared
It was
to,
very vanilla.
yeah. I mean, even though it was fun, a lot of the
It was
stuff,
great.
it was in terms of the tech stuff and new stuff. It was very limited on that side. But like you said, Sky they haven't really they haven't really introduced anything really new to the pre-race format or the post-race. It's pretty much just the exact same stuff that they did all the way back in 2012 as Alonso. Not going to do clearly any quick runs. He's just started a long run in the Aston Martin. Talking of Aston Martin, I don't think anyone's expecting this year for them to do anything different, really, compared to last year. I just wanted to ask you how obviously Adrian Newey starts in 3 or 4 weeks. I think it is. I think it's like a week after the Australian Grand Prix or something. He
Yeah.
starts at Aston Martin. Do you think Adrian's purely going to focus on 2026, or do you think he might bring like a mid-season upgrade just to give the teams like a morale boost?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think they can. I don't think they can focus all that much in 25, and I think quite importantly, I mean, last year was so bad.
Mm,
I think you're right that they do need sort of a morale boost, and to sort of get onto the right path. Because I mean, let's face it, I think next season is probably going to be dictated a decent amount by the engine performance.
yeah.
Um, so I think, yeah, getting that morale and getting things sort of back a little bit more on track could be quite important for the back half of this season.
Yeah, I think confidence wise, because I mean, they had that run obviously at the start of 2023, but since then they've been very, I think, given their expectations and our expectations, they've just been very disappointing. So yeah, even if it was like after the summer break, they brought an upgrade, like a whole massive, like almost like a new car that gave them like an extra, I don't know, second per lap, even though it wouldn't really mean anything because obviously 2026 is a complete reset. At least it would give them that boost of being able to fight for podiums and maybe even race wins for a few races before 2026. And like you said, it's going to be really mainly down to the power units in terms of who is good and who isn't. And with Honda, who knows? They've obviously been away officially for a few years, even though they were still kind of maintaining things to a degree for Red Bull for a couple years. But yeah, I just think they need something. I just don't think Aston Martin can go this season being terrible all year and then just suddenly clicking the fingers next year they're performing at the front of the field. I just don't think that's something that
Yeah.
they need. They need to keep up a decent level of performance rather than just being, entirely terrible. Um as I think Albon there just attempted another lap. Um what was I gonna say? Um yeah, I think we'll move on to quickly the front runners. I mean, I showed you that data yesterday, which I mean showed that McLaren have got good long run pace, it appears, but I mean, that's not really a shock because I mean, that was really the case last year a lot of the time.
Yeah.
With the front runners, I mean, we saw it a year ago where pretty much the pecking order was the same. In Melbourne, are you expecting it to be similar to what we saw, say, in Abu Dhabi? Say McLaren and say Red Bull fighting for pole and Ferrari kind of in there, then Mercedes a bit further back. Because I mean, we so far we've not seen anything that could possibly change our mind.
I don't know. I don't think I could comment too much, quite frankly. I mean, I just hope it's as close as possible, except for Piastri on pole by 17,000 tenths. Um, I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, you'd think McLaren would continue up this level, but I mean, people seemed pretty excited by Ferrari coming into this test, and then I did see after the first day, Marco was like, "I'm quite surprised at how bad Ferrari are." Um, so I think that perhaps all the aura in the world, Ferrari might fall back a little bit, and then of course the genius of Verstappen's able to keep it in with the McLarens. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just can't wait for 2 weeks' time, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's like you said, if it's as close as it was at times at the end of last year, it's gonna be a brilliant weekend. The one bit of data that I did see yesterday, which got me a bit excited, was Mercedes. Their long runs were pretty good. Antonelli was on average quicker than I think Norris on both the C1 and the C2. I think it was, or quicker than Leclerc. It was one of the two by about a tenth per lap, which yeah, got me a bit excited. With Mercedes though, I mean, again, we don't know. I mean, I hope they've got a championship winning car because I mean, 4 teams at the front would be just incredible. But Antonelli versus Russell obviously is going to be something to look out for this year. Do you think Antonelli beats Russell, or do you think Russell is just a bit too good?
I think Russell will be a little bit too consistent.
Right.
I think that's perhaps what we're going to see this season is perhaps Kimmy have some really good highs, but perhaps the floor for his performances isn't quite there. Whereas I think George can be quite consistent. Um, Whereas I think Kimmy might be just a little bit inconsistent. I mean, he didn't really have a consistent car underneath him last year in F2. I mean, that panel last year was kind of consistently shit. So, um, I think that perhaps that will just be a bit of a learning curve. And I mean, we saw sort of at Monza and sort of other practice sessions which he did. It was really good for half a lap, but then you know, I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to find his footing. But I don't think I I think it will be sort of similar to Piastri and Norris a little bit in their first season, where Antonelli catches some eyes with some performances,
Mm.
but Russell is just a little bit more steady. I mean, Russell put in some fantastic performances last year. He really did. Um, as much as I don't particularly like the person, I don't think that can be overlooked.
Yeah. And I just want to say as well, thank you to you guys for watching that video that did obviously really well about me going through the war of words as I put in the thumbnail between Verstappen and Russell. I think it's on 83,000 views now. And it's the most liked video ever on the channel. So thank you guys for that. I think it's on like 1,500 likes almost. Um, yeah, all I've had all winter is comments about how slimy and how much everyone hates Russell. That's literally all I've had is like when I have comment notifications for my videos. That's all. Like occasionally I'll just get a comment from someone saying, "Oh, I fucking hate Russell," or "Oh, Russell's such a politician," and all this. So, yeah, uh, the driver, yeah, he's a very good driver, and like Nib said, had a great season last season. But I think he is at the minute probably one of the least popular on the grid. And looking back, it's for good reason because what he said looking back was quite bad in terms of what he accused Max of, and also it was so obviously bullshit what Russell accused Max of saying. Um, so yeah, we'll see what the reception that Russell gets at the Dutch Grand Prix. That'll be interesting. That'll be fun, especially Russell's on the front row with Max. Yeah, I think Russell will beat Antonelli. I think it will be quite a bit closer than like say Norris and Piastri were when Piastri came in 2023, but it will be similar in
Yeah.
that the consistency will be there with Russell and Antonelli. Yeah, he'll have those few performances that really, wow us, but he just won't be able to do it every week. You know what is funny though? Is I saw, because what was it? I think it was last week, F2 did preseason testing, and magically, Prema now have the best car, I'm hearing. And ART. So, yeah, just great.
We are F2 is so bad.
I love how last year them
Oh,
two teams being so poor pretty much ruined the season because we were all so excited and then it was so bad. We had like Who was it? Was it Paul Aron who was finished second and he had like no race wins at all the whole season? I think it was him. Let me have a look. It was
Yeah.
horrific. That's why I didn't cover it last season, guys, because it was just a horrific season. It was
It,
so
it, it,
poor.
it promised so much
Yeah.
and just it didn't deliver at all.
Yeah, Prema finished fifth in the championship. ART was seventh. Invicta Racing won the Constructors' Championship. Yeah, so yeah, I mean Bortoletto, who I like, but I mean he only had 2 wins all year and he won the championship.
It was like when Johan Mir won MotoGP in the COVID year in 2020, as Albon's just gone fastest with a 29.6.
He has 29.6 uh 650, and Max was also on a quick lap, but I think he may have backed off.
He ran wide at turn 10 and then the exit of is it 13 just at the start of the third sector.
All right, so Max, maybe we'll go for another run for Albon.
And Max was on the C3 as well, compared to Albon on the C4.
Yeah, Albon 3 tenths slower than Sainz yesterday on a softer compound, so still not, the maximum maybe that they could do. But I'll slowly update some of the gaps. And yeah, there's a replay of Max having a bit of a lock up in turn 10. Yeah, Paul Aron finished third. He's now the Alpine reserve driver. He only had 1 win, and it came at like almost at the very end of the season, and he was like almost, I think, in the lead at certain points. It was just like I said, it was an absolutely rubbish season, and I think it's actually funny because for years F2 has such goodwill amongst the fan base, but now I think a lot of people genuinely don't like F2 anymore. Like, not just because of like the cars, but like the Mechachrome thing.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Everyone's stalling on the grid.
Yeah, it's just not fun anymore. And also it doesn't feel fair. That was the whole thing I think everyone loved about F2 was that it was, pretty much equal. There was never any like reliability gremlins or anything. It was just pure
Ugh.
racing. And then ever since Mechachrome have come in, yeah. I mean, remember, what was it? Remember Teo Porcher, even though he won the championship, the amount of problems he had? And the year before that, I think it was, when
even go back to Piastri and his DRS, dude. Like every freaking race it was.
yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't know if they need a reset or something, but they just need to go back to really what made F2, good, which is again removing these stupid reliability issues which have ruined things. It was 2022. Teo Porcher lost the championship because Drugovic, for some reason, and I was wanting to call him Devonich Fakina. I don't know why. Drugovic. For some reason, that name just sounded similar in my head. What do you call it? Yeah, Drugovic. The only reason he won the championship was because his car was more reliable. Really, I mean, he had some good performances in there, but he wasn't the best driver that year. Really, it was. It was just really disappointing. Plus, I mean, like we were saying, the quality of last year's grid was so good, and then everyone just failed to
It was
deliver.
such a massive letdown.
Yeah, last season, could have been like as good as what we had back in the like prime, era, or back like say in 2018, where you had obviously Russell, Norris, Albon, drivers like that. It could have been really something great, and it was just, awful. As we've got just over 45 minutes to go, Yuki Tsunoda is now on a quick lap or quicker lap. He's been doing race runs all day. If you were to guess, I'm not gonna ask you for the whole field, but in Melbourne, who do you think will be on pole position?
Charles Leclerc.
And do you think he will? He'll win.
No.
Who you going for? Who you going for the win?
Oh, Verstappen. I
Yeah,
just feel like I feel like Leclerc is just so good around there. He's
yeah,
had some crazy laps. Was it 22?
yeah. He was like half a second clear, wasn't he? In
Yeah, which
qualifying.
was bloody crazy, and then you end up winning that race by 20 odd seconds after Verstappen DNF'd. God, that's that feels like a lifetime ago. That
um, I think for me, I do agree. I think Max will win the race. The reason I think Max will win the race is because the last couple years, I mean, yeah, he won in 2023, but he's had a lot of bad luck. It feels at that Grand Prix, and I just feel like this year he's gonna, deliver what probably would have happened last year is him winning the Grand Prix. It won't be a comfortable, easy win like it probably would have been last year if he had not, broke down so early. But yeah, I think Max will win probably by a few seconds. In terms of who gets pole, I it's so hard to say. It literally could be three or four different drivers that are constantly crossing my mind. I think I'm probably leaning towards Leclerc purely because Ferrari, I know with the car they've got, should be pretty strong around that track. And I think Leclerc will be better than Hamilton this year.
yeah,
So, yeah, I probably lean towards Leclerc, but I do have a good feeling about Lando Norris getting pole purely because I think
yeah,
McLaren might secretly have a lot more pace than they're letting on.
yeah. Well, they're not showing any of it today, are they?
Yeah,
I mean, they've just been on long runs all day.
yeah. But I think they're one of those quietly confident that they've got maybe not like a car that's miles ahead, but I think they're one of those like quietly confident that they'll be right at the front a lot of the time,
Yeah,
at least to start the season. So yeah, I'd probably say Leclerc or Norris for pole, and then yeah, Max to win the race.
I
Um,
just can't have Norris getting pole in front of my own eyes. Um,
do you think he gets booed?
I can't predict that. No, he doesn't. No, 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 no. Of course not, dude. You've upset me with this because you've just reminded me of the freaking audience I've got to be around in the
Not after
next
the
3 days.
Hungarian Grand Prix stuff.
No, I mean, if it was back in 2014, 2015, yes.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah,
But
it's not a proper audience. Yeah,
correct,
right.
correct.
Okay.
It's not the Australian team. So the Australian team, the Australian crowd booing and cheering when Sebastian Vettel retired from the 2014 Australian Grand Prix.
Yeah,
Like, it's just not that same fan base anymore.
yeah. I mean, the last time really I saw the fans or heard the fans make a real noise there was when obviously Leclerc won in the Ferrari,
Yeah,
which was 2022. I mean, well, last year they won, but I didn't feel like it was anywhere near as big of a reception as Leclerc got a couple
because it
years
was
before.
science.
Yeah, but as well,
That's just the honest truth.
I think it's as well with Leclerc. People were thinking that Leclerc was like on the way maybe to a championship because that's just how it felt at the time, especially with how like dominantly he won. when
Yeah.
so that Ferrari win last year was it wasn't exactly a great win for them considering they got a bit lucky. But now we'll get to the harder predictions. I want your top 3 for the drivers and constructors for 2025.
Um, Verstappen wins the world championship. Norris second. Piastri third. And then obviously McLaren first in the constructors. I think Red Bull will finish second. I think Lawson will do a solid enough job. And then I think Ferrari third.
How with Lawson, before I make mine, with Lawson, do you think like maybe a few podium finishes? Do you think possibly?
Yeah, I definitely think Jesus Sonoda. I think Lawson can definitely finish on the podium, yeah.
I think with me, he will finish on the podium because there'll be obviously a race where maybe 2 or 3 usual runners are just out of the race or whatever. But I think it'll be maybe 2 or 3 times maximum. I just don't think it'll be enough though. I think, as I said earlier, I think his results do depend a lot on whether the Red Bull car. I mean, the Red Bull car at the moment is probably like it was at the end of last year, just on the similar pace with McLaren and Ferrari. If it gets better during the season, then I can see Lawson, regularly getting in there. But as long as the Red Bull car is on the same pace as McLaren and Ferrari, I see him a lot more finishing like 5th, 6th at best. But I do hope that he has a good season because he's had some really good races, obviously for Racing Bulls. For me, constructors, I think McLaren, because I think they're just going to maintain the good car they've got, plus the driver lineup obviously is really good. Ferrari second, and then Red Bull third. Mainly for Red Bull because Lawson I just don't think will score enough big enough points to get Red Bull into second. And then the driver's side, again, nothing of this test has really shown me that any of the front running teams are any different to what I thought coming into testing. So Max I think wins the championship by probably about, I don't know, 20, 30 points ahead of Leclerc second, and then Norris third. And then I think I had Piastri fourth, Hamilton fifth, for my fourth and fifth. But this test has not shown us anything where we sit here and go, oh well, obviously Leclerc's going to win the championship, or Norris is going to do this or that.
It's not like testings of previous years where you could clearly see that Verstappen was going to piss in the championship or Mercedes were going to piss in the championship.
Yeah. So I mean, in Melbourne, as I made the point a couple of days ago. Obviously, this track is a different type of layout to Albert Park, and obviously the couple tracks after that, Shanghai and Suzuka. So maybe let's say Ferrari have got just about the quickest car here. Doesn't mean they'll have that necessarily to start the season. There's obviously different types of tracks, but it's gonna be. I think in Melbourne you're gonna have probably you're gonna have Max in there for pole with Lando, Oscar, Charles, and hopefully Lewis as well. And then the race, a competitive fight for the win and for the podium. I think the only thing really I'm hoping changes is that Mercedes get right in there, because I feel like last season that was when that's when last season got really, really exciting, is when Mercedes got in there, especially like Silverstone around that time. That's when it really, the competitiveness
Yeah.
went, off the scale. As Max Verstappen has returned to the top of the timesheets, 129.5, which is 4/10 of a second slower than his pole position time at this track last year. But yeah, annoyingly, and this is just the way testing has been the last couple of years, you just can't really tell anything major, I guess. And I guess that's the only downside of the regulations being the same from year to year, is nothing really changes from the end of the previous season to this. But of course, this time next year, none of us are going to have a Scooby-Doo what's going on, and we're going to all be just all over the place. And obviously, we'll have an extra team on the grid as well, Cadillac, who,
Thank God.
last I heard, are going to probably have Sergio Perez in their car for next year. But, yeah, I'll just update these gaps. And I think in a few minutes we'll probably come to the end of the stream, because no one really is out there pushing that hard, except, Max, just went quickest, but pretty much everyone else is on long runs, and there's not really much else to see for this session. With the championship though, Neb, do you think it'll be a two-way fight, or do you think we'll have a three-way fight that goes down to the last, I don't know, few races?
This is the thing. I was very tempted to put Leclerc in third, but then I didn't want to do the exact same as last season. I think it's going to be a multi-driver fight for the majority of the season. And then I think it's mostly who's going to be able to hold their nerve, and that's why I just back Max, because I think Max is quite comfortably the most trusted driver on the grid when it comes to pressure situations. And I feel like there are going to be a lot of those this season, and that's why I back Max.
Yeah, that's pretty much why I do, because especially if the cars are so close in performance, if it comes down to it comes all down to basically the driver. Max, 9 times out of 10, is gonna answer the call. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun season. My expectations for Melbourne are not, massive. I think we'll get a good weekend. I don't think it's going to be a classic, but I think we'll have a good competitive weekend. I do think though that what is it? I think probably by the time we get done with the Japanese Grand Prix, which is actually the first part of a triple header at the start of April, I think by then we'll absolutely know what the pecking order is. I think the first couple races, obviously, should suit certain cars, but I think by the time we're done with Suzuka, I think we'll know who is exactly where, and then we'll be able to really know going forward from there who should finish where for the season. But we're looking at Alonso now, who is coming through the final corner. Oh yeah, one final thing to ask before we do head off is, what have you made of the FIA president's behaviour over the winter? Did you see the latest thing with the NDA thing?
No.
What is it? The FIA, it was some meeting, and a few officials, I think from Formula One, weren't able to attend because they refused to sign an NDA that Ben Sulayem insisted on because apparently they don't like the amount of leaks that come out of these meetings. And yeah, there was a bit of upset over that. But yeah, what what have you thought in general about his the winter he's had?
He can go fuck himself. End of statement. Enough said.
Yeah, he's he's extremely tightened the ship that he is running. The whole swearing thing is just so fucking. It's just so stupid. Like, like yeah, don't swear. Obviously, during press conferences and stuff like that. You know, we get that, but the whole like heavy punishment or the big fines, like, it's just so unnecessary. It's just so unnecessary. But the whole reason he's doing this is purely to put his stamp on things, because where this all stems from is he is not happy about the amount of power that Liberty Media have when it comes to Formula One, and he wants to show that he is the boss. That is all that is about. It's not. I mean, if you truthfully asked him, he probably would agree that yeah, the fining the drivers and doing this is probably a bit over the top. But he just wants to, rubber stamp that he is the boss of Formula One in terms of the the regulation of it, and there is just going to be this constant battle until he is no longer the FIA president, which I don't know when the next FIA presidential election is. It's probably in like 2 or 3 years from now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Liberty Media are quietly warming up maybe a candidate to take him down.
Brett, that's going to take place in December. Please, please.
Oh, this December.
Susie Wolf. This December.
Oh,
yeah, I just had a quick had a quick Google.
I was worried it was like 2028 or something.
Nope.
Well, I mean,
in December.
I mean, yes,
Please.
Susie Wolf absolutely is someone who deserves a clear shout, but I feel like he'll be president until the next whenever the next election is after this one. And I think the person who's going to replace him is going to be Toto. I think that is what is going to happen. I think Toto, yeah, he's still Mercedes team boss, but I think he's slowly transitioning himself into becoming FIA president. I think that's what he truly is looking for like the last few years of his professional career, I guess. But I mean, Susie Wolf wouldn't be a bad shout, but I think Toto is very keen to have that role. And Liberty Media, I think, are pretty keen for him to have that role because obviously he'd be on their side. So, yeah. We'll see.
Anyone but this fucking clown.
Yeah. Just, yeah, he is easily the worst FIA president has been since, obviously, Jean-Marie Balest from, obviously, the 80s and early 90s. As Oscar Piastri now on a bit of a quicker run. But yeah, I think we'll bring the stream to an end. Nib, cheers for coming. Obviously, the next time we'll speak to you will be on stream. Will be a week after probably the Australian Grand Prix for the Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Obviously, enjoy the Australian Grand Prix. Hopefully, it's a great weekend and you're able to get a good spot for it, like I know you're normally able to do. And yeah, I hope you have a real good time. But yeah, cheers, obviously, for coming on for the last hour or so.
Of course, yeah, it was a nice little time. Of course, been a little bit since we've spoken voice to voice. And I always do enjoy as Piastri's actually putting in a good lap time here.
Yep, as he comes to the line and goes third on the C3, 29 1:09, which is actually their best lap time of testing, but still way slower than the best times we've seen from yesterday. But yeah, cheers again for coming on for this last hour or so. And as well, thanks to you guys coming along and watching the stream and checking out obviously the reviews I did of day 2 and day 1. Even though they weren't very long, there wasn't obviously a lot to talk about. Cheers for coming along to those anyway. And a quick update as well. So next week I will be uploading my pre-season review, where we'll go through all the data and just try and interpret what that means for the season ahead. And then obviously the week after, I'll do my final season predictions for the field. And then we'll get into the Australian Grand Prix weekend. And like I said earlier, I'll do a qualifying preview the night before qualifying, and then a watch along for qualifying and the race. Make sure to join me for all that content coming up as we get into, finally, the 2025 Formula One season. Let me just quickly finish up this poll in the chat where I asked you guys who will win the 2025 Drivers' Championship. And I'll just wait for the results. Post, there you go, 112 votes. Who will win the championship? And 41% of you have gone for Lewis Hamilton. You think he'll get back to his best level, and clearly most of you think he'll win his elusive 8th championship. Max Verstappen on 29%, Leclerc 17%, and Norris on 11%. But yeah, thanks to you guys so much for coming along. Been great to have you. And until my next video reviewing pre-season testing, which like I said will come out sometime next week, and until my next stream previewing qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix, and in general, until the Australian Grand Prix weekend for the first Grand Prix of what promises to be an incredibly exciting Formula One season, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.